The night Elara Voss tried to run from Blackthorn Manor, she made it exactly 12 steps past the iron gates before she stopped herself. Not because of the February cold cutting through her traveling cloak, not because she had nowhere to go. She stopped because she realized that running would prove them all right. Every whispered accusation, every sidelong glance, every person who'd bet she wouldn't last a month as the Duchess of Blackthorn. And Elara Voss had survived far worse than a house full of people who hated her. This is the story of the woman who married into England's oldest duchy with nothing but a forged name and a spine of pure steel. A story about a man who'd rather watch his wife destroyed than risk feeling anything again. About a house where silence was weaponized and tradition was armor. Before we begin, hit that like button, drop a comment with the name of your city, and let me know how far this story travels. Now, let's go back to where it started. The carriage wheels hadn't even stopped turning when Elara saw her first enemy. The woman stood at the top of Blackthorn Manor's marble steps like a monument to disapproval, her black mourning dress sharp against the gray November sky. Dowager Duchess Constance Hale, Rowan's mother. The woman who'd made it abundantly clear through 3 terse letters that Elara's marriage to her son was an unfortunate necessity, nothing more. "You're late," Constance said as Elara climbed the steps. Not welcome, not even hello. "The roads from Dover were difficult," Elara replied, keeping her voice level. She'd practiced this. The accent, the posture, the way a real duchess might respond to casual cruelty. 3 years of preparation, and it still felt like wearing someone else's skin. "Everything about this is difficult." Constance's eyes traveled over Elara's traveling dress, registering judgment on every button. "Come, the staff is assembled. Try not to embarrass yourself." The entrance hall of Blackthorn Manor was designed to make visitors feel small. Vaulted ceilings stretched 3 stories up. Portraits of dead Hales glared from the walls. 5 centuries of them, their painted eyes tracking movement like sentries. The black and white marble floor gleamed cold enough to skate on. 37 servants stood in rigid lines. Elara counted them reflexively, an old habit from years of memorizing faces, exits, and who might turn on you fastest. "This is the new Duchess," Constance announced, her tone suggesting she was introducing an unfortunately necessary piece of furniture. "You will address her as Your Grace, though she is unfamiliar with proper household management. Direct all real concerns to me." A muscle jumped in Elara's jaw. She'd expected hostility, but this was masterful, undermining her authority before she'd spoken a single word. "Actually," Elara said, her voice carrying across the hall in a way that made several servants' eyes widen, "I look forward to learning how Blackthorn Manor operates. I'm certain we'll work well together." It was a nothing statement, pleasant and meaningless, but she'd reclaimed the moment, and the slight narrowing of Constance's eyes said the message was received. "Your husband is in the East Wing," Constance said. "Third-floor study. He's been informed of your arrival." "Thank you." Elara turned to the nearest maid, a girl of perhaps 16 with nervous hands. "Would you show me the way?" "Mrs. Caldwell will take you," Constance interrupted, gesturing to the severe-faced woman at the head of the servant line. "The housekeeper." Of course. Nothing would happen in this house without Constance knowing about it. Mrs. Caldwell moved like a general leading troops into enemy territory. She didn't speak as they climbed the main staircase, then a second, narrower one. The manor was a maze, corridors branching into corridors, rooms that seemed to serve no purpose but to exist. Everything was gray or black or the color of old bone, no flowers, no color. Even the windows seemed designed to let in minimal light. "The Duke keeps irregular hours," Mrs. Caldwell said finally, stopping before a heavy oak door. "He doesn't like to be disturbed when working. I'll remember that." "Will you?" It wasn't a question. Mrs. Caldwell knocked twice, sharp and efficient, then walked away before anyone answered. Elara waited. 30 seconds passed. A minute. She'd been traveling for 2 days, wearing the same dress, her hair falling out of its pins. She was exhausted and hungry, and standing in a hallway that felt designed to intimidate. She knocked again herself. "Come." The study was all dark wood and darker leather, lit by a fire that didn't seem to warm anything. Maps covered one wall. The other held books in glass cases, the spines too pristine to have been read recently. And behind a desk that could have doubled as a defensive fortification sat her husband, Duke Rowan Hale. Elara had seen him exactly once before, at their wedding 6 weeks ago. The ceremony had taken place in London, witnessed by a magistrate and 2 paid strangers. It had lasted 11 minutes. Rowan had arrived late, signed the documents, and left immediately after. She'd been his wife for exactly 1 conversation. "Are the arrangements satisfactory?" he'd asked. "Yes." "Good. I'll return to Blackthorn. You'll follow when the solicitors complete the financial transfers." That was it. That was her wedding. Now he looked up from whatever document he'd been studying, and Elara saw the same thing she'd seen in that London office, a man who'd perfected the art of feeling nothing. He was 34 years old and looked both younger and infinitely older, his face all sharp angles and controlled neutrality, dark hair, gray eyes like winter fog, and the kind of stillness that came from years of practice. "Elara." He stood, which was more courtesy than she'd expected. "You arrived safely." "I did." "Good." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Sit." She remained standing. It wasn't defiance exactly, but she'd learned long ago that small rebellions mattered. "I'd prefer to stand. I've been sitting for 2 days." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or the ghost of it. It vanished instantly. "As you wish. I assume my mother has made her position clear, crystal clear." "She means well. The transition is difficult for her. My first wife—" He stopped, corrected himself. "The previous Duchess died 3 years ago. My mother hasn't adjusted." "I see." Elara kept her voice neutral, but she wanted to scream. Of course, the dead wife, the perfect, beloved, properly born first Duchess of Blackthorn, whose shoes Elara could apparently never fill. "Your rooms are prepared," Rowan continued, as if discussing a business arrangement, which Elara supposed was exactly what this was. "North wing, overlooking the gardens. You'll have privacy there. I've instructed the staff to provide whatever you need." "How generous." His eyes sharpened. "You have something to say?" "Several things, actually." Elara moved closer to the desk, claiming space. "First, your mother introduced me to the staff as someone too incompetent to manage the household. That ends now. I'm the Duchess of Blackthorn, whether she likes it or not. My mother is a... I don't care what your mother is. I care that I can't function if she's undermining me at every turn." Elara planted her hands on his desk. "Second, these rooms of mine. Are they connected to yours?" "No." "Are they on the same floor?" "No." "Same wing?" "No." Elara laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Fantastic. So you've shoved me as far away as possible while still keeping me technically in the house. I'm giving you privacy. You're giving me exile." She straightened. "Here's what's going to happen. You married me because you needed an heir and your family was pressuring you. Fine. I married you because..." She stopped. "Because I needed safety. Because I needed a name that couldn't be traced. Because I was running out of options. Because I had my reasons. This doesn't have to be a love match, but it does have to be functional. I'm not interested in... I don't care what you're interested in. I'm here, I'm staying, and I'm going to make this work whether you help or not." Elara turned toward the door, then paused. "One more thing. Don't send your housekeeper to deliver messages. If you need to speak to me, do it yourself." She was out the door before he could respond. The north wing was exactly as grim as she'd expected. Her rooms consisted of a bedroom, a sitting room, and a small dressing room, all decorated in shades of gray and lavender. Pretty, in a funeral sort of way. The bed was enormous, the mattress firm enough to sleep on but not welcoming. Fresh flowers sat on the mantel, chrysanthemums, which someone with a sense of irony had chosen, since they were funeral flowers in half of Europe. A maid was unpacking Elara's trunk, the same nervous girl from downstairs. "What's your name?" Elara asked. The girl jumped. "Jenny, Your Grace." "How long have you worked here, Jenny?" 3 years, ma'am, since I was 13. "And before that?" "Orphanage in York, ma'am." Jenny's hands shook as she folded one of Elara's traveling dresses. "Mrs. Caldwell brought me here. She takes girls from St. Margaret's sometimes, when they need staff." Elara felt something twist in her chest. Of course. Girls with nowhere else to go, dependent on this place for survival. Easy to control. "You'll be my lady's maid," Elara said. Jenny's eyes went wide. But ma'am, Mrs. Caldwell said I was just to help with unpacking. She said you'd have a proper lady's maid sent from London. I'm saying you're my lady's maid. Can you dress hair? I can learn. Good. Then we'll learn together. Elara smiled and some of the terror left Jenny's face. Tell me about the house. What should I know? Ma'am, I shouldn't… Jenny… Elara sat on the edge of the bed, making herself less intimidating. I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't belong here. Everyone knows it. The Dowager Duchess hates me. My husband would prefer I didn't exist. And I'm going to make mistakes because I don't know how things work in houses like this. But I'm also stubborn as hell, and I'm going to survive. You can help me, or you can watch. Your choice. Jenny stared at her. Then, slowly, she set down the dress she was holding. The East Wing is the Duke's, she said quietly. He never leaves it except for meals, and sometimes not even then. The Dowager has the West Wing, all of it. She knows everything that happens in this house. Everything. Mrs. Caldwell reports to her 3 times a day. And the South Wing? Empty. Closed off since the first Duchess died. Her rooms are there. Nobody goes in them. Nobody? The Duke went in once, right after she died. Came out and ordered the whole wing sealed. Mrs. Caldwell has the only key. Elara filed that information away. What about staff? Who can I trust? Jenny hesitated. Thomas, the under-butler. He's kind, doesn't gossip, and maybe cook, but she's loyal to the Dowager first. And you? Ma'am? Can I trust you? Jenny's hands twisted in her apron. You've been here 2 hours and you're the first person to ask my name, so yes, ma'am, you can trust me. Dinner was served at 8 o'clock in a dining room designed to seat 40. 3 people occupied it. Constance sat at the head of the table, a breach of protocol since that was technically Elara's position, but no one seemed inclined to correct it. Rowan sat to her right. Elara was placed at the far end, so distant she practically needed a spyglass to see them. How are your rooms? Constance asked with false pleasantness. Adequate, Elara replied. I'm sure they'll suffice until you adjust. That wing has always been for visiting family. The implication was clear, you're temporary. Actually, I find them quite comfortable, Elara said, though I noticed the south wing is closed. I was thinking of using one of those rooms as a study. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The south wing, Constance said, each word precisely placed, is not to be disturbed. Mother, Rowan said quietly, those were Isabel's rooms. Everything stays as it was. It's been 3 years, Elara said, keeping her tone gentle but firm. Surely, you know nothing about this family. Constance's composure cracked for just a second, showing raw anger underneath. Isabel was a true duchess, beloved by everyone. She ran this house perfectly. She was dead, Elara finished. I'm sorry for your loss, truly, but I'm here now and I need space to… You need to remember your place. Mother, Rowan said again, louder this time. That's enough. Constance turned to her son. Is it? You bring this woman into our home, knowing nothing about her, and expect us to simply… I expect you to treat my wife with basic civility. Your wife? Constance laughed, bitter and sharp. You don't even know what her father did for a living. Elara's blood went cold. She'd been careful, so careful, building her false background. Minor gentry, deceased parents, raised by an aunt in Bath. Simple enough to be believable, vague enough to be hard to verify. Her background was vetted by the solicitors, Rowan said. By solicitors you hired specifically to expedite this farce. Constance stood. I've done some investigation of my own. Your aunt in Bath doesn't exist. Neither does the family estate in Somerset. So tell me, dear daughter-in-law, who are you really? The room went silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Elara had prepared for this. She'd known someone would eventually dig deeper, but she'd hoped for more time. My family is dead, she said quietly. All of them. Whatever estate existed was sold to pay debts. I had nothing. I was nothing. Your son offered me a chance to be something else, and I took it. She met Constance's eyes directly. You want to know who I really am? I'm someone who survives. That's all you need to know. Rowan, Constance said, still staring at Elara. She's lying. Probably. Rowan's voice was flat. I don't care. Both women turned to him. I needed a wife, he continued. One who wouldn't demand affection or attention. One who understood this is a practical arrangement. Her past is irrelevant as long as she fulfills her duties here. It shouldn't have hurt. Elara had known exactly what this marriage was, but hearing it stated so baldly, so carelessly, felt like a slap. Fine, Constance said, but when this explodes, and it will, I want it noted that I warned you. She swept out of the dining room, leaving her dinner untouched. Elara and Rowan sat in silence. The footman serving them looked like he wanted to melt into the wallpaper. You can go, Rowan told him. The footman fled. So, Elara said, proud that her voice didn't shake. That went well. She'll adjust. Will she? Because it seems like she'd prefer I spontaneously combust. My mother is, Rowan paused, searching for words, protective. Isabel's death devastated her. They were very close. And you? What about me? Did it devastate you? Rowan stood, folding his napkin with mechanical precision. That's not your concern. Actually, it is. You're my husband. On paper. We both know what this is, Elara. Don't pretend otherwise. He moved toward the door. You'll attend Sunday service with the family. The whole county will be watching. Try to look like you belong. He left before she could respond. Elara sat alone in the massive dining room, surrounded by portraits of Hales who'd been dead for centuries. They all seemed to be looking at her with the same expression. You don't belong here. I know, she whispered to them, but I'm staying anyway. Hush. Sleep didn't come easily that first night. Elara lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to Blackthorn Manor settle around her. The house made sounds, creaks and sighs and distant footsteps. Or maybe it was just old wood adjusting to the cold. Hard to tell. At 2 a.m, she gave up and lit a candle. The sitting room had a small bookshelf, mostly filled with novels deemed appropriate for ladies. Romance, morality tales, nothing too stimulating. But on the bottom shelf, she found something interesting. A journal, leather-bound and expensive. She shouldn't. She knew she shouldn't. She opened it anyway. January 4th, 1849. Mother Constance has convinced Rowan to commission new portraits for the gallery. She insists the current collection doesn't properly represent the family's legacy. I suspect she simply wants more chances to remind everyone how important the Hales are. Still, I won't argue. Choose your battles. Rowan seems distant lately. More than usual. I asked if something was troubling him and he said, "Nothing that concerns you." Direct quote. As if I'm not his wife. As if I don't notice when he disappears for days into his study. Sometimes I wonder if he married me just to satisfy his mother's demands for an heir. If I'm just another duty he must endure. Isabel. This was Isabel's journal. Elara knew she should close it, put it back, forget she ever found it. Instead, she turned the page. March 17th, 1849. Hosted dinner for the Ashfords and Blackwells tonight. I wore the emerald dress Rowan gave me for Christmas. He didn't notice. He barely looked at me all evening. When Lady Ashford complimented my hosting, Rowan said, "Mother taught her well," as if I'm just an extension of Constance, with no thoughts or abilities of my own. I'm so tired of being invisible in my own marriage. Elara's hands tightened on the journal. She'd expected to hate Isabel, the perfect first wife, the standard she'd never meet. Instead, she found something uncomfortably familiar. A woman trapped, trying to matter. August 2nd, 1849. I'm pregnant, finally. Mother Constance cried when I told her. Rowan said good and went back to his correspondence. I don't know what I expected. Love, perhaps? Excitement? Something beyond clinical satisfaction that I've fulfilled my function? I used to dream about marriage as a girl. Romance, partnership, building a life together. What a fool I was. The entries ended in October 1849. 3 months later, according to what Jenny had told her, Isabel died in childbirth. The baby with her. Elara closed the journal carefully. She should feel sympathy. She did feel sympathy. But underneath that was something sharper. Recognition. Rowan hadn't loved Isabel. Maybe he'd cared about her in some detached way. But love? No. He'd shut her out exactly the way he was shutting Elara out now. The only difference was that Isabel had tried to earn his affection. Elara wouldn't make that mistake. Sunday service was an exercise in public humiliation. The Hales attended St. Michael's Church, where the family had occupied the front pew for 500 years. Their box was literally roped off from common parishioners, raised slightly above the rest, ensuring everyone could watch them. And everyone did watch. Elara walked down the center aisle between Rowan and Constance, feeling every eye track her movement. Whispers followed like a wake behind a ship. Is that her? I heard she's a merchant's daughter. Actress, someone told me. Theater background. No breeding at all. Poor Rowan. Elara kept her chin up and her expression serene. She'd performed in front of audiences before, more hostile ones than this, though admittedly with lower stakes. She knew how to project confidence even when her stomach was churning. The vicar, Reverend Shelby, gave a sermon about duty and proper Christian marriage. He made pointed eye contact with Elara during several passages, particularly one about wives submitting to their husband's wisdom. After the service, the congregation gathered outside for the mandatory social hour. This was the real purpose, not worship, but display. Who spoke to whom? Who was acknowledged? Who was deliberately snubbed? Constance immediately swept over to Lady Ashford, an elegant woman in her 50s who seemed to radiate authority. Helena, how lovely to see you. Constance. Lady Ashford's eyes cut to Elara. And this must be the new Duchess. I'm afraid so. The "I'm afraid so" hung in the air like poison gas. Pleasure to meet you, Your Grace, Elara said, extending her hand. Lady Ashford took it with 2 fingers, the way one might handle a dead fish. Quite a quick courtship, I understand. We didn't see the need to delay. No, I suppose you wouldn't. Lady Ashford's smile was all teeth. Tell me, where did you make your debut? I don't recall seeing you in London. It was a trap. If Elara claimed a London debut, someone would fact-check it. If she admitted to not having one, she confirmed her lower status. I didn't debut, Elara said. My family circumstances were complicated. How unfortunate. Lady Ashford turned back to Constance. You must be so overwhelmed training her, like teaching a puppy not to soil the carpets, I imagine. Several women nearby laughed. Elara felt her face burn, but she kept her expression neutral. Rowan stood 10 feet away, deep in conversation with Lord Ashford and another gentleman. He didn't even glance over. This was it then. This was her life. Public humiliation while her husband pretended she didn't exist. Actually, a new voice interrupted, I think a quick wedding shows admirable decisiveness. A man had joined their circle, young, maybe 30, with dark blonde hair and an easy smile that seemed genuine. He bowed to Elara. Julian Thorne, at your service. My estate borders Blackthorn to the east. Pleasure, Mr. Thorne. The pleasure is mine. I've been away in Scotland for 6 months. Returned to find we have a new Duchess. Very exciting. He ignored the disapproving looks from Constance and Lady Ashford. How are you finding Yorkshire? Rather different from Bath, I expect. Cold, Elara said, grateful beyond words for someone being kind. But beautiful. Wait until winter properly arrives. Then it's just cold. Julian grinned. I hope you'll consider yourself welcome to visit Thornfield whenever you need escape. I mean, company. My sister Margaret is dying to meet you. She doesn't get many opportunities for intelligent conversation out here. Mr. Thorne, Constance said icily, I'm sure the Duchess has quite enough demands on her time without social calls. Of course. But the invitation stands. Julian tipped his hat to Elara. Your Grace. As he walked away, Lady Ashford sniffed. The Thornes have always been too familiar. His father had similar boundary issues. The conversation moved on to other topics, all pointedly excluding Elara. She stood there like a piece of furniture, occasionally acknowledged, mostly ignored. Rowan finally came over as people were leaving. Ready? For hours, Elara said. In the carriage ride back, Constance launched immediately into critique. Your curtsy to the vicar was too deep. It shows desperation for approval. And you spoke too much to Mr. Thorne. People will think you're forward. He was the only person who spoke to me like a human being. He was being inappropriate. You're a married duchess, not a girl at a garden party. Mother, Rowan said tiredly, don't mother me. Someone has to teach her. She's embarrassing the family. I stood there and let your friends insult me to my face while you encouraged them, Elara said, her careful control finally cracking. What exactly should I have done differently? You should have stayed home until you were ready to appear in public. When would that be? After I've transformed into someone worthy of the Hale name. Elara laughed bitterly. I'm never going to be good enough for you. We both know it. Finally, Constance said. A glimmer of self-awareness. Rowan stared out the window, saying nothing. The carriage pulled up to Blackthorn Manor. Elara climbed out without waiting for assistance and walked straight inside, past the assembled staff, up the stairs to her exile in the north wing. Jenny found her an hour later, still in her church dress, staring at nothing. Ma'am, you missed lunch. I brought soup. Thank you, Jenny. Elara took the bowl mechanically. Tell me something. Does it get better, living here? Jenny bit her lip. For some people, maybe. That's not encouraging. I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't know what else to say. The truth is fine. Elara set down the soup. I need you to do something for me. Find out everything you can about Isabel. Not the official story, the real one. Who her friends were. What she did with her time. Why people loved her so much. Ma'am, I don't think... I'm not trying to compete with a ghost, Jenny. I'm trying to survive a house full of people who wish I was one. Elara met her maid's eyes. Please. Jenny nodded slowly. I'll try, Buzz. Over the next 3 weeks, Elara learned the rules of Blackthorn Manor. Don't speak at meals unless spoken to. Don't rearrange furniture. Don't question how things have always been done. Don't go near the south wing. Don't expect your husband to acknowledge your existence. She broke every single one. Small rebellions at first. She moved furniture in her sitting room, creating a space that felt less like a tomb. She began eating breakfast in her rooms instead of the formal dining room where Constance could lecture her. She asked questions about household management, forcing Mrs. Caldwell to include her in decisions. And every evening at 8 o'clock, she walked down to the music room. The music room was on the ground floor, tucked in a corner where it wouldn't disturb anyone important. The piano was a beautiful instrument, a broadwood grand, rosewood case, ivory keys yellowed with age. It was also covered in dust. Nobody plays anymore, Jenny had told her. The first Duchess used to, but after she died, the Dowager ordered it closed, said the sound was too painful. Elara sat at the bench and tested middle C. Slightly out of tune, but not badly. She played a simple scale, then another. Her fingers remembered the patterns, even though it had been years. The door crashed open behind her. Mrs. Caldwell stood there, face flushed with anger. What do you think you're doing? Playing piano? This room is closed. The door wasn't locked. That doesn't mean you can just... The Dowager specifically. The Dowager doesn't own this house. My husband does, and he hasn't forbidden me from being here. Elara played another chord, letting it ring out. If there's an actual problem, she's welcome to tell me herself. Mrs. Caldwell's mouth opened and closed. Then she spun and left, her footsteps echoing down the hall. Constance appeared within 10 minutes. Out, she said. No. I beg your pardon? I said no. Elara continued playing, a simple folk melody, nothing challenging. I'm not breaking anything. I'm not disturbing anyone. I'm playing a musical instrument in a music room. If that's somehow wrong, you'll need to explain why. Isabel played that piano. I know. Jenny told me. Elara's hand stilled on the keys. I'm sorry that my playing reminds you of her, truly, but I can't live in this house tiptoeing around grief forever. It's been 3 years. You have no idea. You're right. I don't. I never had a daughter, but I know what it's like to lose people, and I know that keeping everything frozen in place doesn't bring them back. It just means you're frozen too. Constance stood there for a long moment, her face working through emotions. Finally, she said, "Play quietly," and left. It was the closest thing to permission Elara had gotten since arriving. She played for an hour. Simple pieces, nothing showy, but with each note, she claimed a little more space in this house that didn't want her. When she finally stopped, her fingers aching, she found Rowan standing in the doorway. She didn't know how long he'd been there. "I didn't know you played," he said. "There's a lot you don't know about me." "By design." "Yours or mine?" "Both." He walked into the room, moving with that careful control he always had. "My mother is upset." "Your mother has been upset since I arrived." "This is different." "Because I'm touching Isabel's things? Using her piano? Existing in her house?" Elara stood, facing him. "When does it become my house, Rowan?" That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because from where I'm standing, everything in Blackthorn Manor belongs to either your mother or your dead wife. There's no room for me anywhere. You have your rooms. A guest suite in the north wing. Very generous. Elara moved closer. Tell me something honestly. Why did you marry me? The real reason. I told you. You needed an heir, I know, but you could have married anyone. Some nice girl from a proper family, someone your mother would actually approve of, someone who knew how to be a duchess. Instead, you married me, a woman with a questionable background who you met exactly once before the wedding. Why? Rowan's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might actually answer honestly. Then his walls came back up. Because you asked no questions, he said. You wanted security. I needed a wife. It was simple. Nothing about this is simple. It could be if you'd stop pushing. Stop pushing? Elara laughed. I'm trying to exist, Rowan. That's all. Just exist in this house without being erased. And apparently, that's too much to ask. What do you want from me? Acknowledgement. Basic human decency. Her voice rose. You won't defend me to your mother. You ignore me in public. You flinch when I enter a room like I'm personally offensive. I'm your wife, and you treat me like an embarrassing mistake you're stuck with. Because that's what this is. The words exploded out of him with sudden fury. You think I wanted this? Another wife? Another person to... He stopped himself forcefully. This arrangement works if we both accept what it is. Stop trying to make it something more. The truth of it hit Elara like cold water. He wasn't indifferent. He was terrified. Terrified of feeling anything, of risking anything, of letting anyone close enough to hurt him again. I'm not trying to make you love me, she said quietly. I'm just trying to make you see me. I do see you. That's the problem. He turned toward the door. Play your piano. I don't care. But don't expect me to join your crusade to transform Blackthorn into something it's not. What is it then? Dead. It's dead, Elara, and it needs to stay that way. He left her standing there, surrounded by dust and silence and the ghost of his first wife. Elara sat back down at the piano. Her hands were shaking, but she placed them on the keys anyway. And she played, loud, filling the dead house with sound whether it wanted it or not. In her small room off the kitchen, Jenny heard the music and smiled. In the West Wing, Constance heard it and felt something crack in her carefully controlled grief. And in his study, Rowan heard it and pressed his palms against his desk, fighting the urge to go back down there. To say what? He didn't know. That's what made it so dangerous. The music continued until midnight when Elara's fingers finally gave out. She went back to her rooms in the north wing, climbed into bed, and fell asleep still wearing her clothes. She'd survived another day in the House of Ice. Barely, but she'd survived. The music became Elara's declaration of war. Every evening at 8 o'clock, she sat at that piano and played. Mozart, Bach, folk songs her mother had taught her before everything fell apart. The notes echoed through Blackthorn Manor's corridors like an invading army, and there wasn't a damn thing anyone could do about it. Well, they could do things, and they did. Mrs. Caldwell began forgetting to have fires lit in Elara's rooms. Small thing, petty thing, but effective when Yorkshire December hit, and the north wing turned into an icebox. Elara wore 3 shawls and kept playing. The cook started serving Elara's portions last, when everything was cold. Elara ate it anyway and complimented the meal. Constance stopped speaking to her entirely, which was honestly an improvement. And Rowan? Rowan became a ghost. Elara would catch glimpses of him, crossing the entrance hall at dawn, disappearing into his study, riding out across the moors at odd hours. But they hadn't had a real conversation since the night in the music room. He took his meals in his study. He avoided any room she occupied. It would have hurt if Elara had expected anything different. Jenny became her only real ally, though even that friendship had to exist in whispers and stolen moments. The girl brought her information piece by piece, always nervous, always looking over her shoulder. Lady Ashford's been visiting the Dowager twice a week, Jenny reported one morning while helping Elara dress. And Lord Pemberton came by yesterday. He's on the board of something, charitable foundation maybe? They were in the drawing room for 2 hours. What does Lord Pemberton have to do with anything? He's connected to everyone important. If there's gossip, he knows it first, and spreads it fastest. Jenny fumbled with a button. Ma'am, they're planning something. I can feel it. Let them plan. I'm not going anywhere. But Jenny's instincts proved right. 3 days before Christmas, Constance announced they'd be hosting a holiday gathering. 50 guests, full formal dinner, Boxing Day celebration to follow. Absolutely not, Elara said when Mrs. Caldwell delivered the news. I wasn't consulted about this. The Dowager Duchess doesn't require consultation for family traditions. I'm the Duchess now. These decisions go through me. Mrs. Caldwell's smile was thin and sharp. You're welcome to take that up with Her Grace. She's in the drawing room. Elara found Constance reviewing seating charts with the precision of a general planning a battle campaign. We need to discuss this party. It's not a party. It's the annual Blackthorn holiday gathering. We've held it for 200 years. Then why wasn't I told about it until now? Because you're not organizing it. I am. Constance didn't even look up from her charts. You'll attend, wear something appropriate, and try not to embarrass us. That's your only responsibility. That's not how this works. Actually, it is. You have no experience running events of this scale. You'd fail spectacularly, and I won't let you humiliate this family in front of Yorkshire's finest. Constance finally met Elara's eyes. Accept your limitations. My limitations? Elara's voice went dangerously quiet. You've done everything possible to ensure I fail here. No authority, no support, no basic courtesy. And now you want to parade me in front of 50 people who already think I'm a fraud? You are a fraud. I've confirmed it. The room went cold. I beg your pardon? Constance stood, moving to her writing desk. She pulled out a folder, thick with papers. I hired investigators, discreet ones. They've spent the last 6 weeks tracing your background. She opened the folder. Elara Voss. Orphaned at 14 when your father, a merchant sailor, died of fever in Portsmouth. Your mother, a seamstress, followed 6 months later. You were taken in by a theatrical troupe, the Kensington Players. Low-class entertainment, barely respectable. Elara's heart hammered, but she kept her face blank. So? So you spent 3 years performing in second-rate theaters across England. Bath, Dover, Manchester, Bristol. Always moving, never staying long. Then you disappeared from records entirely for 2 years. 2 years, Elara. Where were you? That's none of your business. It is when you're claiming to be a duchess. Constance pulled out more papers. Then suddenly, 18 months ago, you appear in London, renting a modest room, attending etiquette courses, carefully constructing a false identity. You studied us, didn't you? Studied the nobility. Learned how to mimic us. I improved myself. That's not a crime. It is when you use it to deceive your way into one of England's oldest families. Constance stepped closer. You're a con artist, a performer playing the greatest role of your life, and I'm going to prove it to everyone at this gathering. Does Rowan know you've done this? Rowan doesn't need to know. He made a catastrophic mistake marrying you. I'm correcting it. By destroying me publicly? By revealing the truth. Constance smiled. I've invited several people who were in Bath during the period you claim to have lived there. They've never heard of you or your fictional aunt. I've invited patrons of the Kensington Players. They remember you quite well. And I've invited some very influential members of the peerage who are deeply invested in maintaining proper bloodlines. Elara felt the trap closing. Why wait? Why not expose me now? Because I want witnesses. I want everyone to see exactly what kind of woman you are. And then I want them to pressure Rowan to annul this farce of a marriage. Constance returned the folder to her desk. The gathering is in 3 days. I suggest you prepare yourself. Elara walked out of that drawing room on legs that barely held her. She made it to the music room before her composure shattered. This was it. Everything she'd built, gone. She'd survived poverty, survived the streets, survived worse things than she'd ever told anyone. She'd clawed her way up from nothing, remade herself completely, and now it was all going to collapse because one bitter old woman couldn't let go of her dead daughter-in-law. The piano sat there, waiting. Elara's hands were shaking too badly to play. She told you. Elara spun. Rowan stood in the doorway, still in his riding coat, mud on his boots. How long have you known? Her voice came out raw. That my mother hired investigators? 2 weeks. She informed me over breakfast. And you didn't think to warn me? What would be the point? The information exists. Warning you wouldn't change that. It might have given me time to prepare. To leave before she humiliates me in front of... Leave? Something dangerous flickered in Rowan's eyes. Is that your plan? Run away? What choice do I have? Stay and let your mother destroy what's left of my reputation? Watch while she parades her evidence and everyone realizes I'm exactly what they suspected. You could fight, Elara laughed bitterly. Fight? With what? She has proof, Rowan, documentation, witnesses. I can't fight facts. Then confirm them. He walked into the room. Own your past instead of hiding from it. Easy for you to say. You were born a duke. You've never had to pretend to be something you're not just to survive. Haven't I? The words came out sharp enough to cut. You think I'm not performing every day? Playing the role of the unfeeling aristocrat who doesn't care about anything? You think that's who I actually am? I don't know who you actually are. You won't let anyone close enough to find out. Because getting close means getting hurt. His control cracked completely. It means caring about people who die, who leave, who... He stopped himself, breathing hard. My mother wants to destroy you because you're not Isabel. Because nothing will ever be good enough to replace what we lost. But you running away won't fix that. It'll just prove her right. I don't care about proving her right or wrong. I care about surviving. Then survive here. Stay and fight. Why? Elara moved closer, searching his face. Why do you care if I stay or go? You've made it clear this marriage means nothing to you. I never said that. You didn't have to. Your actions said it perfectly. Rowan's jaw worked. I know this hasn't been easy, but running solves nothing. You want to know why I married you specifically? Because you weren't afraid. When we met in that solicitor's office, you looked at me like I was just a man. Not a title, not a tragedy, just a person. Everyone else I met after Isabel died looked at me with pity or calculation. You looked at me with honesty. And then you spent 2 months avoiding me. Because honesty is terrifying. He ran a hand through his hair. Stay, Elara. Face this gathering. Let them see who you really are. A fraud? A survivor, someone who rebuilt herself from nothing. That takes more courage than being born into privilege ever could. He moved toward the door, then paused. The gathering is in 3 days. I'll be attending, and I'll be sitting next to my wife. He left before she could respond. Elara stood there, her mind racing. Stay and fight. Easy to say, harder to do when the battlefield was designed specifically to destroy you. But running meant losing everything again, meant proving Constance right, meant another new identity, another desperate scramble for safety, another few years before someone else discovered the truth. She was so tired of running. Jenny found her an hour later, still in the music room. Ma'am, Mrs. Caldwell wants to know if you'll need alterations on your dinner gown for the gathering. I'm not sure I'm attending. Jenny's face fell. Oh, ma'am, I'm sorry. The staff knows what the Dowager's planning. We've all been talking about it. It's cruel, what she's doing. It's effective. Give credit where it's due. Will you really leave? Elara looked at this girl, this orphan who'd found a place in a hostile house and made it work. Do you think I should? I think... Jenny chose her words carefully. I think the Dowager expects you to run. She's been telling everyone you will, says people like you always do when confronted with truth. People like me? Her words, not mine. Jenny twisted her hands. But ma'am, if you stay, some of us would stand with you, not publicly. We can't. We'd lose our positions, but we'd help however we could. Why would you risk that? Because you asked my name, Jenny's voice went fierce. You're the first person in this house who treats me like I matter, and I'm not the only one. Thomas, the under-butler, his daughter was sick last month. You sent your own physician and paid the bill. You didn't announce it, didn't make a show of it, you just did it. That matters to people. Elara had forgotten about that. The girl had been seriously ill with fever, and the local doctor was incompetent. It had seemed like the obvious thing to do. The Dowager's right about one thing, Jenny continued. You're not like them. You're not cold, and you're not cruel, and you're not obsessed with bloodlines and tradition. You're better. And if you run, they win. They get to keep being exactly what they are. What if staying means being torn apart? Then you'll have been torn apart fighting instead of hiding. Isn't that better? Elara smiled despite everything. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher? Jenny bobbed a curtsy. Shall I tell Mrs. Caldwell you'll need the gown altered? Elara took a deep breath. This was insane. This was probably the worst decision she'd ever made. But Jenny was right. Running meant they won. Tell Mrs. Caldwell I'll need the burgundy silk and have it altered to fit perfectly. If I'm going to be destroyed, I'm going to look spectacular doing it. Jenny grinned. Yes, ma'am. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation that Elara was deliberately excluded from. Staff rushed through the halls carrying decorations, linens, arrangements. The kitchen operated at fever pitch. Extra servants were hired from the village. And through it all, Constance orchestrated with cold precision, occasionally glancing at Elara with that knowing smile. The cat before it pounced. Elara spent the time doing something that probably seemed insane. She wrote everything down. Her real history, unvarnished and complete. Every year, every city, every desperate decision. She filled 20 pages with truth. What are you doing? Rowan asked, finding her in the library on the evening before the gathering. Preparing. She didn't look up from her writing. For? Tomorrow. Your mother wants truth. I'm going to give her truth. All of it. On my terms. That's dangerous. So is lying. At least this way I control the narrative. She set down her pen. Tell me about the people coming. Who are they? Rowan sat across from her. The Ashfords you've met. Lord Pemberton chairs half the charitable foundations in Yorkshire. Lady Winters is a gossip who'll spread whatever she learns across 3 counties. Sir Edmund Bartley sits in Parliament. The Harringtons are old money, older than us, and there will be at least a dozen others who matter socially. And Constance has arranged for some of them to recognize me. Probably. Fantastic. Elara returned to her writing. Do you believe she'll actually try to have our marriage annulled? She'll try. Whether she succeeds depends on whether I let her. And will you? Rowan was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. If you want out of this marriage, if you want your freedom back, maybe annulment is the kindest option. Is that what you want? What I want is irrelevant. It's the only thing that's relevant. Elara stood. You keep acting like you're a passive observer in your own life. Like things just happen to you and you have no choice but to accept them. But you do have choices, Rowan. You made one when you married me. You're making one now by letting your mother orchestrate this circus. What would you have me do? Whatever you want. Stand with me, stand against me, stand aside. I don't care. But make an actual decision instead of hiding in your study pretending none of this touches you. It's not that simple. It never is. She gathered her papers. I'm going to bed. I have a long day of public humiliation ahead of me. She left him sitting there in the library, surrounded by books written by people who were long dead and couldn't hurt him. The morning of the gathering dawned clear and bitterly cold. Elara dressed with Jenny's help, the burgundy silk gown fitting like armor. They'd styled her hair simply, no elaborate curls or decorations that might seem like she was trying too hard. You look beautiful, ma'am, Jenny said. I look like I'm about to walk into battle. Same thing, really. Guests began arriving at noon. Elara watched from her window as carriages pulled up, disgorging Yorkshire's finest in their winter finery. She recognized some faces from church. Others were strangers who'd come specifically to watch her burn. A knock at her door. Thomas, the under-butler. Your Grace, the Dowager requests your presence in the drawing room. Tell the Dowager I'll come down when I'm ready. Thomas hesitated. Ma'am, she was quite insistent. I'm sure she was. Elara waited another 20 minutes, timing it so she'd arrive after all the guests had assembled. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. When she finally descended the main staircase, conversation stopped. The entrance hall was packed with people. All eyes turned to her. Ah, there she is, Constance said, her voice carrying perfectly. The Duchess of Blackthorn. We were beginning to worry you wouldn't join us. I wouldn't miss this for anything, Elara said. She worked the room the way she'd learned in those etiquette courses. Gracious smile, appropriate small talk, perfect posture. She could feel the assessment in every gaze. Some were openly hostile, others merely curious. A few seemed sympathetic, though they hid it quickly. Lady Winters cornered her near the refreshment table. Such an unusual background you have, Your Grace. The Dowager mentioned you were raised in Bath. The Dowager was mistaken. I was raised in Portsmouth. Lady Winters' eyes gleamed. Oh? How interesting. And your family? Dead, unfortunately. Common tragedy, really. Fever. How sad. And afterward? I survived. However I could. The drawing room doors opened. Dinner is served, Mrs. Caldwell announced. The seating arrangement was calculated torture. Elara found herself between Sir Edmund Bartley, who looked at her like she was a stain on the tablecloth, and a woman named Mrs. Whitmore, who spent the entire first course telling everyone about the importance of proper breeding. Rowan sat at the head of the table, Constance to his right. He looked miserable, which was something. Lord Pemberton stood halfway through the second course, glass raised. A toast to our hosts. Duke Rowan, your generosity in opening Blackthorn for the holidays is much appreciated. Everyone drank. And of course, Pemberton continued, to the new Duchess, such an interesting addition to Yorkshire society. The pause before interesting was deliberate. Tell us, Lady Ashford said, her voice deceptively pleasant. How did you and the Duke meet? The courtship was so sudden. Through mutual acquaintances in London, Elara said. How vague. Surely there's a more romantic story. Not really. We met, we talked, we suited each other. Simple as that. Simple. Constance set down her wine glass. I wonder if our guests would find the real story quite as simple. Here it came. Mother, Rowan said quietly. No, darling, I think it's time for honesty. Constance looked around the table. You see, I've done some research into our new Duchess's background. Fascinating discoveries. This isn't appropriate dinner conversation, Rowan said. Isn't it? We're all friends here. Family. Constance's smile was poisonous. Did you know, for instance, that there is no record of an Elara Voss in Bath between 1848 and 1850? No aunt, no family estate, no social connections at all. Mother, stop this. There is, however, a record of an actress named Elara Voss performing with the Kensington Players, a theatrical troupe of questionable reputation. They specialized in melodramas and cheap entertainment for working-class audiences. Constance turned to Elara. Would you care to confirm or deny? Every eye was on Elara, the moment of truth. She could lie, but Constance clearly had more ammunition ready. She could stay silent and let people assume the worst, or she could do what she'd planned. She stood. It's all true, she said clearly. Every word. I was an actress. My father was a merchant sailor. My mother was a seamstress. They died when I was 14, and I joined the Kensington Players because it was that or starve. I performed in cheap theaters for 3 years, then spent 2 years in London teaching myself how to speak and dress and behave like I belonged in society. I built a false identity, met the Duke, and married him. Everything the Dowager says is correct. The room exploded in whispers. However, Elara continued, her voice cutting through the noise, I did not deceive my husband. He knew exactly who and what I was when he proposed. He chose me anyway. So this performance, she gestured at Constance, is designed not to expose me, but to humiliate him, to undermine his authority and judgment, to prove that she, not he, controls this family. Constance's face went white with fury. As for my qualifications to be a duchess, Elara continued, I'll admit they're unconventional. I wasn't born to this. I learned it. I worked for it. I fought for it. And I'm still here despite every attempt to drive me out. If that's not aristocratic resilience, I don't know what is. She sat down. Her hands were shaking, but she kept them hidden in her lap. Sir Edmund cleared his throat. Well, that was certainly candid. Too candid, Mrs. Whitmore said. This is precisely why bloodlines matter. You can't simply decide to be nobility. Why not? The voice came from the far end of the table. Julian Thorne. Elara had forgotten he was invited. If we're honest, half the noble families in England started with someone who killed the right person or slept with the right royal. At least her grace earned her position through determination rather than murder. A few people laughed nervously. The point, Constance said, standing, is that she lied. She deceived us all. How can we trust anything she says? We can't, Rowan said, standing as well. Trust is earned, but so is respect. And I respect my wife's honesty tonight more than I respect this ambush you've orchestrated. Rowan, no, Mother, enough. He looked around the table. My wife's background is unconventional. I knew that when I married her. If anyone here has a problem with it, you're welcome to leave. No one moved. Rowan, you're making a terrible mistake, Constance said. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. The rest of the dinner was agony. People spoke in careful, measured tones about meaningless topics while avoiding eye contact with Elara. When it finally ended, guests fled to the drawing room for after-dinner drinks. Elara slipped away to the music room. She was shaking so badly she could barely sit at the piano. The adrenaline that had carried her through dinner was fading, leaving only exhaustion and delayed terror. She'd done it. She'd told the truth. And now everyone knew exactly what she was. The door opened. Rowan. That was brave, he said. That was stupid. Maybe both. He sat beside her on the piano bench. You played it well, though. Turned her attack into your defense. Did I? Or did I just confirm everything they already believed about me? Does it matter what they believe? Yes, because they're your people, your world. And now they know you married a fraud. I married a survivor. He turned to face her. Elara, I need to tell you something about Isabel, about why I... He stopped, struggling with words. She was perfect. Everyone says so. Beautiful, accomplished, kind, everything a duchess should be. And I felt nothing for her. Nothing. I tried. I wanted to feel something, but it was like there was a wall between me and the world. Elara waited. She knew, Rowan continued. She knew I didn't love her. She died giving birth to a child I'd only conceived out of duty, thinking I was doing what was expected. And the guilt of that, his voice cracked. I killed her, Elara, through my inability to feel, through treating her like an obligation instead of a person. That's not... It is. And when she died, everyone mourned this wonderful woman while I felt relief. Relief that I wouldn't have to keep pretending. What kind of person does that make me? Human, Elara said quietly. It makes you human. I swore I'd never do that again. Never pretend to feel something I didn't. When I married you, I thought it would be simple, practical. No expectations, no disappointments, no guilt. He laughed bitterly. But you wouldn't let it be simple. You fought and pushed and refused to be invisible. And now I can't pretend you don't matter. Elara's breath caught. I don't know what I feel, Rowan said. I've spent 3 years numbing myself, and I don't know how to feel properly anymore. But I know I don't want you to leave. I know watching you face down my mother tonight made me proud. And I know that terrifies me more than anything. Rowan! The door burst open. Mrs. Caldwell, her face flushed with alarm. Your Grace, there's a problem. Lady Winters has taken ill. Fever and chills. The physician thinks it might be influenza. Wonderful, Rowan muttered. Get her to a guest room. Send for Dr. Harrison. There's more. 3 other guests are showing symptoms, and some of the staff. Rowan and Elara exchanged looks. Influenza outbreaks could devastate entire households. Quarantine them, Elara said immediately. Separate the sick from the healthy. Get the well guests out of the house before they're exposed. You can't order guests to leave, Mrs. Caldwell said. Watch me. Elara stood. Rowan? He nodded. Do it. The next few hours were chaos. 4 guests had definite symptoms. 3 more were suspicious. Rowan and Elara worked together evacuating the healthy ones, ignoring protests about propriety and inconvenience. This is outrageous, Lord Pemberton complained. This is practical, Elara shot back. Stay and risk infection, or leave now, your choice. Most chose to leave. By midnight, only the sick remained, isolated in the East Wing guest rooms. Elara had transformed into something she hadn't been since her theater days. Organized, efficient, unflinching. She directed staff, organized care rotations, ensured supplies were available. You're good at this, Jenny said, bringing fresh linens. I've nursed sick people before, theater troops mostly. Influenza burned through our company once in Manchester. I was one of 3 people who didn't get sick. Elara checked on Lady Winters, who was sleeping fitfully. Check their temperatures every 2 hours. If any of them get worse, wake me. Ma'am, you should rest. You've been up for 20 hours. So have you. I'm used to it. Elara was about to argue when she heard shouting from downstairs. She rushed down to find Rowan and Constance in a vicious argument. Can't seriously be letting her take charge. She's doing better than you would. She's an actress playing nurse. Those people's lives are at stake. Yes, and she's actually trying to save them instead of worrying about appearances. Rowan's voice was raw with exhaustion and anger. Where were you while we were organizing quarantine? In your rooms, hiding. I was trying to preserve some dignity for this family. To hell with dignity. The words exploded out of him. 4 people are seriously ill. Half our staff is showing symptoms. And you're worried about dignity? Constance's face was crimson. How dare you speak to me that way? I dare because I'm done, Mother. Done with your control. Done with your manipulation. Done with your obsession with keeping everything exactly as it was when Isabel was alive. She's dead. She's been dead for 3 years. And the only person who can't accept that is you. The slap echoed through the hall. Constance stared at her hand, shocked by her own action. Rowan touched his cheek, equally stunned. I'm sorry, Constance whispered. Rowan, Get out. His voice was flat. Pack your things. You're leaving tomorrow. This is my home. This is my house, and I want you out of it. Constance looked at Elara, her face twisted with hate. This is your doing. You've poisoned him against me. No, Rowan said. You did that yourself. Every time you undermined Elara, you undermined me. Every time you treated her like she didn't belong, you showed exactly how little you respect my judgment. I've tolerated it because you're my mother, but that ends now. Constance drew herself up. You'll regret this. I already do. I regret not doing it 2 months ago. He turned his back on her. Good night, Mother. Constance stood there for a moment, trembling with fury. Then she swept up the stairs without another word. Elara and Rowan were left standing in the entrance hall, both of them reeling. You didn't have to do that, Elara said quietly. Yes, I did. He looked at her. I'm not good at this, at feeling, at expressing, at any of it. But I'm trying. That has to count for something. It counts for a lot. From upstairs came a crash, something heavy hitting the floor. Then Jenny's voice, panicked. Your Grace! Your Graces! Lady Winters! She's having trouble breathing! They ran. Lady Winters' face had gone gray, her breathing coming in shallow, desperate gasps that sounded like tearing fabric. Elara pushed past Jenny into the room, her mind immediately cataloging symptoms. Fever, disorientation, respiratory distress. She'd seen this before, in Manchester. The influenza had killed 3 people in their troop before it burned itself out. Get Dr. Harrison now, she told Rowan, and bring steam, boiling water, cloths, anything that produces moisture. Her lungs are filling. Rowan didn't question her. He simply ran. Elara knelt beside the bed, turning Lady Winters onto her side. Jenny, prop her up. More pillows. We need to keep her airway clear. Ma'am, I don't know what I'm doing. Neither do I. We're doing it anyway. Elara grabbed Lady Winters' wrist, feeling for a pulse. Rapid, thready. Not good. Stay with me, Lady Winters. Keep breathing in and out. That's all you have to do. Lady Winters' eyes rolled back, her body convulsed. No, no, no. Elara forced the woman's jaw open, checking her airway. Clear, but barely. Jenny, get me something to bite down on. Leather, cloth, anything. Move. Jenny scrambled, returning with a folded handkerchief. Elara wedged it between Lady Winters' teeth just as another seizure hit. The woman's body arched off the bed, muscles locked rigid. Rowan burst back in with Dr. Harrison, an elderly man who looked half asleep and wholly unprepared. She's seizing, Elara said without looking up. Fever's too high. We need to cool her down and clear her lungs, or she'll die. Dr. Harrison blinked at her. I beg your pardon, I'm the physician here. Then act like one, Elara snapped. Tell me I'm wrong about what's happening. He couldn't. His face went pale as he finally took in the severity of Lady Winters' condition. Ice. We need ice from the cellar. And yes, steam like you said. Eucalyptus if we have it. I'll get the ice, Rowan said, already moving. The next 20 minutes were a blur of controlled panic. They packed Lady Winters in ice, draped steaming cloths over her chest, forced her to inhale heated air mixed with eucalyptus oil that Thomas had miraculously found in the stillroom. Elara's dress was soaked with sweat and water, her hair falling out of its pins, her hands shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, Lady Winters' breathing eased. The seizures stopped. Her fever began to drop. She'll live, Dr. Harrison said finally, sounding surprised, though it was a near thing. Elara sat back against the wall, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. Jenny looked like she might cry from relief. "How did you know what to do?" Dr. Harrison asked. "Experience. Bad experience." Elara closed her eyes. "Check the other patients. If their fevers are climbing, we need to catch it before they reach crisis." Dr. Harrison nodded and left. Rowan helped Elara to her feet. "You need rest," he said. "So do you." "I'm not the one who just performed miracles." "That wasn't a miracle. That was desperation and luck." But she let him guide her out of the room, his hand steady on her elbow. They made it to the hallway before her knees buckled. Rowan caught her, and for a moment they just stood there, holding each other up. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what? Anyone would have—" "No, they wouldn't. Half the people at that dinner would have let her die rather than get their hands dirty." His arms tightened around her. "You saved her life. You saved all of them." "We don't know that yet." "I do." They stayed like that for a long moment, neither quite willing to let go. Then footsteps echoed down the hall. Mrs. Caldwell, her face tight with stress. "Your Grace, 2 more staff members are showing symptoms. And the Dowager—" She paused. "The Dowager has locked herself in her rooms and refuses to speak to anyone." "Let her sulk," Rowan said. "Focus on the sick." But something in Mrs. Caldwell's expression made Elara's stomach drop. "What aren't you telling us? One of the new patients is Martha, the head housemaid. She was helping care for the first wave of sick." Mrs. Caldwell's voice wavered. "She has a daughter in the village, 8 years old. If Martha brought the influenza home before she showed symptoms, then half the village could be infected by now," Elara finished. "How many families have we had contact with in the last week?" "Dozens. The holiday preparations required extra staff, deliveries, visitors." Rowan swore. "We need to warn them. Send riders to the village immediately. Tell them to isolate anyone showing symptoms." "It's 2 a.m, Mrs. Caldwell said. "I don't care if it's noon on Sunday. People are dying. Send the riders." Mrs. Caldwell hurried off. Rowan turned to Elara. "You should sleep. You're dead on your feet." "So are you." "I'm not the one who—" He stopped, his eyes narrowing. "Your hands are shaking." "Exhaustion. Or the start of infection." He grabbed her wrist, pressing his palm to her forehead. "You're burning up." "I'm fine. It's just hot in here from all the steam." "Elara." His voice went sharp with fear. "How long have you felt sick?" "I don't—" But now that he'd said it, she couldn't ignore the ache in her bones, the heaviness in her chest, the way her head felt stuffed with cotton. "A few hours, maybe. I thought it was just exhaustion." "We're getting you to bed, now." "I can't. The patients need you alive, not collapsed in a hallway." He swept her up before she could argue, carrying her like she weighed nothing. "Put me down. I can walk." "Humor me." He carried her all the way to her rooms in the north wing, kicked the door open and deposited her on the bed with more care than she'd expected. Jenny appeared moments later with Dr. Harrison. "Let me examine you," the doctor said. Elara wanted to argue, but another wave of dizziness hit her. She let him check her pulse, listen to her breathing, press his hand to her forehead. "Early stages," he said finally. "If we're lucky, it'll stay mild. If we're not—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. "What do we do?" Rowan asked. "Keep her cool. Fluids. Watch for respiratory distress like Lady Winters. And pray." "She needs someone with her," Jenny said. I can stay." "You've been exposed already," Dr. Harrison said. "You'll likely fall ill yourself within the next day or 2. Your Grace—" He turned to Rowan. "You should stay away from her. You're the only one in this house who hasn't shown symptoms or direct exposure. If you fall ill, there's no one left to manage this crisis." "I'm not leaving her." "Rowan." Elara tried to sit up, failed. "He's right. You need to stay healthy." "I don't care." "I care. Someone has to—" A coughing fit cut her off, sharp and painful. When she pulled her hand away from her mouth, there was blood on her palm. The room went silent. "That's not good," Dr. Harrison said quietly. "How not good?" Rowan's voice was carefully controlled, which meant he was terrified. "It means the infection is moving faster than I'd hoped. We need to monitor her constantly." Dr. Harrison stood. "I'll prepare medications. Your Grace, I strongly advised, I'm staying." After the doctor left, Rowan pulled a chair beside the bed. Elara tried to protest again, but she was too tired. The fever was climbing, making everything feel distant and unreal. "Tell me about the theater," Rowan said suddenly. "What?" "You said you were with the Kensington Players for 3 years. Tell me about it. What was it like?" "Why do you want to know?" "Because you're sick and scared and I'm trying to distract you. Work with me here." Despite everything, Elara almost smiled. "It was terrible and wonderful. We traveled constantly, never stayed anywhere longer than a month, performed in halls that were falling apart, to audiences that were sometimes drunk and usually rowdy. The money was awful. The conditions were worse. Then why did you stay?" "Because it was better than the alternative. And because—" She paused, trying to find words. "Because on stage I could be someone else. Someone brave, someone clever, someone worth watching. Real life was cold and hungry and dangerous, but for 2 hours every night, I got to pretend I was more than just a girl trying not to starve." Rowan's hand found hers. "You're still that person, brave and clever and worth watching. The only difference is you're not pretending anymore." "I'm always pretending. That's all I know how to do." "That's not true. Tonight, when you were fighting to save Lady Winters, that wasn't performance. That was real." The fever was getting worse. Elara could feel it spreading through her body like fire. "What if I don't make it through this?" "You will. You don't know that. People die from influenza. Strong people, healthy people. I've seen it happen. Then I'll sit here and make sure you're not one of them." His grip on her hand tightened. "You don't get to leave, Elara. Not after making me feel things again. That's not fair." "Since when is life fair?" "Good point." She drifted off some time after that, her dreams fevered and strange. She was back in Portsmouth, watching her mother die. Back in Manchester, watching the influenza tear through their theater troupe. Back in that London solicitor's office, meeting Rowan for the first time and thinking he looked like a man who'd forgotten how to be alive. She woke to daylight and voices arguing outside her door. "Absolutely not. She's infectious." "I don't care. I'm going in." The door opened. Constance stood there, still dressed in last night's gown, her hair disheveled in a way Elara had never seen. "Mother, what are you doing?" "I'm going to help." Constance moved to the bed, her face set with determination. "I nursed Isabel through illness more than once. I know what to do." "You hate me," Elara said, her voice hoarse. "Yes, but you saved those people last night. Lady Winters is singing your praises to anyone who will listen. Even delirious with fever, she remembers you fighting for her." Constance picked up a cloth, dampening it in the water basin. "I'm many things, but I'm not so petty that I'd let you die out of spite." "That's very generous," Elara said dryly. "Don't misunderstand. I still think you're wrong for this family. But Rowan has made his choice, and watching my son suffer through another wife's death would destroy what's left of him." She pressed the cloth to Elara's forehead with surprising gentleness. "So you're going to live. Consider it my Christmas gift." It's the thought that counts. Something that might have been a smile flickered across Constance's face. "You're more resilient than I gave you credit for. I'll grant you that." Over the next 3 days, the influenza raged through Blackthorn Manor like a wildfire. 11 staff members fell ill. 2 more guests who'd tried to wait out the storm came down with symptoms. The village sent word that Martha's daughter had indeed infected 6 other families, and Elara's condition worsened. The fever climbed to dangerous levels. She developed the same respiratory distress that had nearly killed Lady Winters. There were moments, hours maybe, where she wasn't sure if she was awake or dreaming. She'd see Rowan sitting beside her bed, then blink, and it would be Constance, then Jenny, then her mother, which couldn't be right because her mother had been dead for 15 years. "Stay with us," someone kept saying. Rowan, probably. "Don't you dare leave." "I'm not going anywhere," she tried to say, but her lungs were full of fluid and the words came out as gasps. Dr. Harrison looked grim. "The next 12 hours are critical. If her fever doesn't break—" "It will," Rowan said. "Your Grace, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility—" "Get out!" "I'm only trying to help you understand." "I understand perfectly. Now get out of this room before I throw you out." Dr. Harrison left. Elara heard Rowan sink back into his chair, heard him take a shaking breath. "You're not allowed to die," he said quietly. "Do you hear me? I know we barely know each other. I know this marriage was supposed to be practical and emotionless and safe, but you ruined that. You made me care, and now you don't get to leave me with that. So whatever you're doing, fighting, giving up, negotiating with fate, stop it. Come back. Elara wanted to answer. She tried, but the darkness was so heavy, and she was so tired. She let it take her. When she opened her eyes again, sunlight was streaming through the windows. Real sunlight, not the fever dream kind. Her body ached like she'd been beaten, but her head was clear for the first time in days. Rowan was asleep in the chair beside her bed, his head resting on his arms on the mattress. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, still wearing the same shirt he'd had on 3 days ago. "Rowan," she whispered. His head snapped up. For a moment he just stared at her. Then his face crumpled with relief. "Your fever broke 3 hours ago. Dr. Harrison said you'd wake up soon, but I wasn't sure." He stopped, his voice breaking. "I'm okay," Elara said. "I think... How long was I?" 4 days. 4 days of hell." He grabbed her hand. "Don't ever do that again. I'll try not to catch influenza in the future. Can't promise anything." He laughed, the sound half sob. "You're making jokes. That's a good sign. How is everyone else? Lady Winters, the staff?" "Recovering. All of them. We didn't lose anyone." He squeezed her hand. "Because you taught us how to fight it. Dr. Harrison has been using your methods on all the patients. Steam, ice, elevation. It's working." "Good. That's good." Elara tried to sit up, failed. "Why do I feel like I was trampled by horses?" "Because you nearly died. Multiple times." Rowan helped prop her up with pillows. "My mother has been helping care for you." "I know. I remember pieces of it." Elara frowned. "Is she still planning to leave?" "I don't know. We haven't discussed it. We've been too busy trying to keep you alive." A knock at the door. Jenny peeked in, her face lighting up when she saw Elara awake. "Ma'am, thank heavens, we've been so worried." She caught herself. "Sorry, I'll let you rest. Just wanted to check on you." "Wait, Jenny, are you well? You didn't get sick?" "I did, ma'am. Mild case, though. Was only down for 2 days. Back on my feet yesterday." She grinned. "Guess I'm resilient." "Guess you are." After Jenny left, Elara turned back to Rowan. "You need sleep, real sleep, in a bed." "I'm fine." "You look like death." "Flattering." "I'm serious. Go sleep. I'm not dying anymore. You can stop the vigil." "What if your fever comes back? Then someone will wake you." "Rowan," she touched his face, feeling the rough stubble. "Thank you for staying, for caring, for all of it. I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice. You chose me." Finally, something shifted in his expression, something raw and honest. "I'm terrified of this, of feeling things, of letting you matter." "I know, but I think it might be too late to stop it. Probably way too late." He leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. "When you're better, when you're strong enough, we need to talk, really talk, about what this marriage is, what we want it to be." "I'd like that." He kissed her forehead and left, finally willing to rest. Elara lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the ache in her body, but also something else, something that felt dangerously like hope. She slept again, and this time her dreams were peaceful. When she woke the second time, it was late afternoon. Constance sat in the chair Rowan had vacated, reading a book. "You're awake," Constance said without looking up. "Apparently. How do you feel?" "Like I survived something I shouldn't have." "Accurate assessment." Constance closed her book. "The village is recovering. 7 families affected, but no deaths. They're calling it a miracle." "It's not a miracle, it's medical intervention." "Which you organized. They're also calling you a hero." Constance's mouth twisted. Irritating, but factual. "Are you leaving?" Elara asked directly. "I don't know. Rowan asked me to stay. Said the house needs family right now, especially with you recovering." Constance met her eyes. "But he also made it clear that if I stay, things change. No more undermining you, no more schemes. I cooperate or I leave. Those are my options." "What are you going to do?" "I haven't decided. Part of me wants to leave just to spite you both. But the other part..." She paused. "I spent the last 4 days helping keep you alive. It was exhausting and frustrating, and I resented every moment of it. But it also reminded me what it feels like to matter, to be needed. I've spent 3 years frozen in grief, and Rowan spent 3 years frozen in guilt. Neither of us was living. We were just existing. And now? Now I'm forced to admit that you might be good for him, and for this house. You're not Isabel. You'll never be Isabel. But maybe that's the point. Constance stood. I'm going to stay, provisionally. We'll see if we can tolerate each other long enough to make it permanent. That's very gracious of you. Don't push it. After Constance left, Elara lay there processing everything. The influenza outbreak had changed something fundamental in Blackthorn Manor. The crisis had forced everyone to work together, to see each other as people rather than obstacles. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was progress. 2 weeks passed. Elara's strength returned slowly. She spent her days in her rooms, reading, sleeping, gradually rebuilding her stamina. Rowan visited twice daily, and their conversations grew longer, more honest. They talked about their childhoods, their fears, their mistakes. They talked about Isabel without the subject being forbidden territory. They talked about what kind of marriage they wanted to build. I don't know how to do this properly, Rowan admitted one evening. Romance, affection, all of it. I've spent so long avoiding feeling anything that I don't know how to let myself. Then we learned together, both of us. What if I fail? What if I hurt you the way I hurt Isabel? Isabel wasn't hurt by your lack of love. She was hurt by your dishonesty, by pretending to feel something you didn't. Elara took his hand. I don't need you to love me, Rowan. I need you to be honest with me. If love comes, it comes. If it doesn't, we'll figure out something else. What if it already came and I'm just too broken to recognize it? The question hung in the air between them, vulnerable and terrifying. Then I guess we'll figure that out too, Elara said quietly. By early January, life at Blackthorn Manor had returned to something resembling normal. The sick had recovered. The house had been thoroughly cleaned and aired out. And the story of the Duchess who'd saved Yorkshire from influenza had spread across 3 counties. Lady Winters visited as soon as she was strong enough to travel. I owe you my life, she said, clasping Elara's hands. I remember pieces of that night, you refusing to give up on me, fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself. Anyone would have done the same. No, they wouldn't, Lady Winters smiled. I judged you harshly at that dinner. I let Constance influence my opinion. I was wrong. Please accept my apology. Of course. And my friendship, if you'll have it. Yorkshire can be isolating for those of us who don't quite fit the mold. It was a small victory, but it mattered. Over the next few weeks, other visitors came. Some curious, some grateful, some still skeptical but willing to reassess. The tide was turning. Not completely. There were still plenty who thought Elara was an upstart fraud, but enough minds had changed that she could breathe a little easier. Then, on a gray February morning, a letter arrived that changed everything. Elara was in the music room when Thomas brought it to her. Your Grace, this came by special courier. The messenger said it was urgent. The envelope was expensive paper, sealed with wax. No return address. Elara's hand shook as she opened it. The letter inside was written in a familiar hand, one she hadn't seen in 3 years. Elara, congratulations on your marriage. Quite the achievement, becoming a duchess. I always knew you were talented, but this exceeds even my expectations. I'm writing because I find myself in need of funds. My current venture has hit some difficulties, and I thought perhaps you might be willing to help an old friend. After all, we shared so much in those years you seem so eager to forget. I'll be in York next week. We should meet. I have so many stories to share about our time together. I'm sure your new family would find them fascinating. Yours, Marcus Thorne. The letter fell from Elara's hands. Marcus Thorne, the director of the Kensington Players, the man who'd given her a place when she had nowhere else to go, the man who taught her how to perform, how to survive, how to become someone else, the man who knew every secret she'd buried, and he was coming to Yorkshire to destroy her. Elara read the letter 3 more times, each word burning itself into her brain. Marcus Thorne. She hadn't thought about him in years, had deliberately not thought about him, burying those memories under layers of careful reinvention. He'd been 35 when she joined the Kensington Players at 14, charming and manipulative in equal measure. He'd He'd given her food and shelter and a way to survive, but the price had been steep. Control, dependence, the kind of debt that never really got paid off. She'd escaped when she was 17, disappearing in the middle of the night after a performance in Bristol. She'd spent the next 2 years looking over her shoulder, terrified he'd find her. Eventually, she'd convinced herself she was safe. She'd been wrong. "Ma'am?" Thomas was still standing there, concerned. "Are you well? You've gone very pale." "I'm fine." The lie came automatically. "Thank you, Thomas. That will be all." He left reluctantly. Elara sank onto the piano bench, her mind racing. Marcus wanted money. That much was clear. But he also wanted leverage. He always wanted leverage. That's how he'd kept his theater troupe together for decades, collecting secrets and using them strategically. She could pay him, make the problem disappear with money. But men like Marcus were never satisfied with one payment. He'd bleed her dry, always threatening to reveal more. She could tell Rowan, let him handle it. But what would she say? "The man who essentially owned me for 3 years is blackmailing me. And by the way, there are parts of my past I never told you about." They'd just started building something real. This could destroy it. Or she could run, pack a bag, disappear before Marcus arrived, spare everyone the mess. No, she'd spent too many years running. She was done. The door opened. Rowan walked in, stopped when he saw her face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Just tired still from the illness." "Elara." He crossed to her. "You're a terrible liar. What happened?" She almost laughed. 3 months ago, she'd been lying to everyone constantly and pulling it off. Now Rowan could read her in seconds. "I received a letter." She handed it to him. "From someone I knew, before." Rowan read it, his expression darkening with each line. "Who is Marcus Thorne?" "The director of the theater troupe I told you about. I worked for him for 3 years. Then I left, and I thought I'd left that life behind entirely." Elara stood, needing to move. "He's blackmailing me, coming here to do it publicly if I don't pay." "What does he have on you that we haven't already exposed? Everyone knows you were an actress." "Everyone knows I was an actress. They don't know the rest." "What rest?" Elara's throat tightened. "Marcus ran a theater company, yes, but that wasn't all he ran. He had other ventures, less legal ones, and sometimes, when money was tight, his actors were expected to help." Understanding dawned in Rowan's eyes, followed by fury. Were you forced to?" "No, not that, but close enough to make me complicit in things I'm not proud of." Elara met his gaze directly. "Con games, mostly. We'd perform in a town, identify wealthy marks, and some of us would work them for money. I was good at it, young, innocent-looking, talented at playing whatever role was needed. I helped steal from people, Rowan. Not violently, but effectively. You were a child. I was old enough to know what I was doing, old enough to choose it over starving." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I'm telling you this because you deserve to know. If Marcus comes here, he'll tell everyone. He'll paint me as a criminal, and he won't be entirely wrong." Rowan was quiet for a long moment. "How much does he want?" "He didn't say. That's part of his game. Make me guess. Make me desperate. Then we don't play his game." Rowan's voice went hard. "We meet him in York, public place, witnesses, and we make it clear that blackmail won't work. He'll tell everyone anyway. Let him. You survived my mother's exposure attempt at Christmas. You'll survive this." He took her hands. "But you're not facing him alone. Understand? You don't have to." "Yes, I do. You're my wife. Someone threatens you, they threaten me." His grip tightened. "Besides, I'm done watching people hurt you without consequences." Elara felt something crack open in her chest. "I don't deserve you." "Good thing I disagree." They sent a reply to Marcus that same day. They'd meet him in York at the Merchant's Hotel, public dining room, 1 week from now. Neutral ground with plenty of witnesses. Over the next week, Elara prepared like she was going into battle. Because she was. She told Jenny everything, the full truth about her past, the con games, the things she'd done to survive. Jenny listened without judgment. "Ma'am, I stole food from the orphanage kitchens for 2 years before they sent me away. We all do what we must to live." She helped Elara pack for the York trip. "You're not the same person you were then, aren't I?" "I'm still lying. Still pretending to be something I'm not. No, you're becoming something you are. There's a difference. Constance's reaction was more complicated. So you were a thief as well as an actress, she said when Rowan and Elara told her. They'd decided she needed to know. Better she hear it from them than from Marcus. I was a con artist, Elara corrected. There's a distinction, not a meaningful one. Mother, Rowan warned. No, she's right. Elara faced Constance. I did terrible things. I'm not proud of them, but I won't apologize for surviving. Constance studied her for a long moment. How much did you steal? Total? The question surprised Elara. I don't know. Hundreds of pounds over 3 years? Maybe more. And this Marcus creature, he kept most of it? All of it. We got food and shelter. He got everything else. So you were more victim than criminal. Interesting. Constance stood. I assume you're planning to confront him in York? We are. Then I'm coming with you. Mother, that's not necessary. Yes, it is. This man is threatening our family. I may not like how you joined it, Elara, but you are part of it now, and Hales protect their own. Constance's smile was sharp. Besides, I've dealt with men like this before. They think women are easy targets. They're wrong. The trip to York took most of a day. They arrived the evening before the meeting, checking into the Merchant's Hotel, one of the finest in the city. Elara barely slept, her mind running through scenarios. What if Marcus had evidence she couldn't refute? What if he knew things even she'd forgotten? What if Rowan saw her through Marcus's eyes and realized what a mistake he'd made? Morning came too quickly. The hotel's dining room was elegant and busy, exactly what they'd wanted. Witnesses everywhere. Marcus couldn't make a scene without looking like the villain. They arrived early and chose a table in the center of the room. Elara wore her most expensive dress, sapphire silk that screamed money and legitimacy. Rowan sat beside her, Constance across. A united front. Marcus arrived exactly on time. He'd aged since Elara had seen him, gray threading through his dark hair, lines around his eyes. But his smile was the same, charming, calculated, dangerous. Elara, you look spectacular. Duchess suits you. He pulled out a chair without being invited. And you must be the Duke. Lucky man, your wife is extraordinarily talented. Get to the point, Rowan said coldly. Direct, I appreciate that. Marcus ordered tea from a passing waiter, perfectly comfortable. I find myself in financial difficulty. My theater company has struggled since Elara left. She was our star, you see. I'm in debt to some rather unpleasant people. I need 10,000 pounds. The sum hung in the air. It was enormous. Enough to buy a house, to live on for years. And if we refuse, Elara asked, then I share stories with newspapers, with society columnists, with anyone who will listen. Stories about the Duchess of Blackthorn's criminal past. Specific stories, names of victims, dates, methods. I kept excellent records. He sipped his tea. Your reputation survived being an actress. I wonder if it'll survive being a thief. You have no proof, Rowan said. I have witness statements from our entire troupe. I have letters Elara wrote describing our plans. I have documentation of bank deposits that coincide perfectly with our schemes. Marcus's smile widened. I told you I keep excellent records. Elara's stomach dropped. She'd been young and stupid and had written everything down like a diary. Marcus had kept it all. So those are my terms. 10,000 pounds by the end of the month, or I destroy you publicly. Marcus stood. Think it over. You know where to reach me. He left before they could respond. The silence at their table was suffocating. That's more money than I can access quickly, Rowan said finally. It would take weeks to liquidate assets. We're not paying him, Elara said. If we don't, he'll do it anyway. Men like Marcus always do. We pay him 10,000 now. He'll want 20,000 next year. This never ends unless we end it. How? Constance asked. He has evidence. Then we need better evidence. Evidence that destroys him before he destroys us. Elara's mind was racing, old instincts kicking in. Marcus kept records of everything, which means he kept records of his own crimes too. If we can find those, we can't break into his rooms, Rowan said. That's illegal. So is blackmail. We're past legality here. Elara stood. I need to find the theater troupe. If Marcus is in York, they're here too. Someone in that company hates him enough to help us. How do you know? Because I did. and I can't have been the only one. They split up. Rowan went to consult with a solicitor about legal options. Constance stayed at the hotel to keep watch in case Marcus returned. And Elara went hunting for ghosts. She found the Kensington Players performing at a rundown theater on the east side of York. The building was worse than she remembered. Peeling paint, sagging roof, the kind of place where rats were audience members. The performance was already underway when she arrived. A melodrama about betrayal and revenge, the actors overplaying every emotion. Elara watched from the back, her memories flooding in. She'd stood on that stage. She'd lived this life. She waited until the performance ended, then slipped backstage. The dressing rooms were exactly as she remembered, cramped, chaotic, reeking of grease paint and sweat. She found who she was looking for in the third room, Catherine Marsh. She'd been 19 when Elara left, already bitter and tired from years under Marcus's control. Now she looked 35 instead of 22, the hardness around her eyes speaking to difficult years. Elara. Catherine's shock was genuine. Jesus, we all thought you were dead. Close enough. Can we talk? Privately? They walked to a tavern 3 streets over. Catherine ordered gin immediately. You became a duchess, Catherine said. Marcus has been raging about it for weeks. Said you stole his best actress and his best con artist in one go. He taught me too well. He's blackmailing you, isn't he? That's why you're here. How did you know? Because he's Marcus. It's what he does. Catherine downed her gin. He's been planning this since he found out about your marriage. Spent months tracking down every piece of evidence from your time with us. He's going to bleed you dry. Not if I stop him first. Catherine, I need help. I need evidence of his crimes, real evidence that'll stand up in court. Banking records, contracts, anything that proves he was running cons. Why would I help you? You left. You escaped. We're still trapped here. Because you hate him as much as I do, and because if I destroy him, you're all free. Catherine studied her. He keeps everything in a lockbox in his room, never lets it out of his sight. You'll never get to it. I don't need to get to it. I need to make him bring it to me. Elara leaned forward. Tell me about the troupe. Who's still there from my time? Who owes him money? All of us owe him money. He makes sure of it. Charges us for everything, costumes, lodging, food. We're all in debt. Then help me free you. I have a plan, but I need people willing to perform one more con. The last one. Catherine's eyes narrowed. What kind of con? The kind that makes Marcus believe he's won, right before we take everything from him. Over the next 2 days, Elara rebuilt her old network. Catherine brought in 4 other members of the troupe, all people who'd suffered under Marcus's control, all desperate enough to risk helping. They met in secret, planning carefully. The con was simple in theory, complicated in execution. They'd stage a fake business deal, Elara's desperate attempt to raise the £10,000 by selling assets. Marcus would bring his evidence to the meeting to ensure leverage. And while he was focused on the deal, they'd photograph every document in his lockbox. Photography was new technology, expensive but effective. Rowan had hired a photographer in York who specialized in document copying. The man was expensive and asked no questions, which made him perfect. This is insane, Rowan said when Elara explained the full plan. If Marcus realizes what we're doing, he won't. He's too arrogant. He thinks I'm still that scared 14-year-old girl he controlled. Elara's voice hardened. He's wrong. And if this fails, then we're no worse off than we are now. They set the trap for 3 days later. Elara sent Marcus a letter. She'd raised the money, but she wanted proof of his evidence before paying. They'd meet at a private office Rowan had rented, exchanged documents and money simultaneously. Marcus agreed immediately. Of course he did. He thought he'd won. The day of the meeting, Elara dressed carefully. Not Duchess elegant, but slightly disheveled. Like someone who'd been up all night worrying. She needed to look desperate. The rented office was on the 2nd floor of a building near the river. Small, private, with a back room where the photographer waited with his equipment. Catherine and 2 other actors were positioned nearby, ready to play their parts. Marcus arrived with his lockbox, looking triumphant. You made the right choice, he said, setting the box on the desk. I knew you'd see reason. Show me the documents, Elara demanded. I need to see what I'm paying for. Marcus pulled out a folder, thick with papers, letters in Elara's handwriting, witness statements, bank records. everything he'd threatened. Satisfied? I want to review them. Make sure you're not selling me copies while keeping originals. Elara, I'm hurt you'd think so little of me. You're blackmailing me, Marcus. I think exactly as little of you as you deserve. While Elara slowly reviewed each document, asking questions and taking her time, Catherine entered with tea, playing a maid. She bumped the desk accidentally, spilling tea near Marcus's lockbox. He jumped up, cursing, distracted. That's when the photographer in the back room went to work. The office had a false wall, thin enough to shoot through with the right equipment. He photographed every document Elara held up, using a system of mirrors to get clear images. It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of Elara stalling, asking questions, pretending to worry. Marcus grew impatient but not suspicious. Finally, she set down the papers. All right, the money. Rowan entered with a bank draft, £10,000, drawn on the Blackthorn accounts. Real, negotiable, devastating. Marcus reached for it. Elara pulled it back. One more thing. I want your word this ends here. No more threats, no more demands. You have my word, Marcus said, lying smoothly. Good. She handed over the draft. He handed over the documents. The exchange was complete. Marcus left victorious, already counting his money. As soon as he was gone, the photographer emerged with his plates. Got everything. Clear images, too. These'll develop perfectly. Elara's knees went weak with relief. Rowan caught her. We did it, she whispered. You did it. This was all you. Now what? Catherine asked. She'd stayed to watch the exchange. Now we take the evidence to a magistrate, Rowan said. Prosecute him for extortion, conspiracy to commit fraud, running illegal operations. He'll go to prison. And the troop, Catherine's voice was small. What happens to us? Elara looked at her, this woman who'd helped despite everything. What do you want to happen? I want to never see another stage again. I want to never pretend to be someone I'm not. I want a life that's actually mine. Then you'll have one. All of you. Elara turned to Rowan. Can we help them? Find them legitimate work, housing, something? Consider it done. The photographs developed beautifully. Crystal clear images of Marcus's meticulous records of criminal activity spanning 2 decades. Not just the cons he'd run with Elara, but dozens of others. Evidence of fraud, extortion, theft, even assault. They brought it all to Magistrate Holbrook, a stern man known for hating corruption. This is extensive, he said, reviewing the photographs. You say this man is currently in York? At the Black Swan Inn, Rowan confirmed. He won't be for long. Holbrook called for constables. We'll arrest him tonight, and these others, he gestured to the list of troop members. They're willing to testify? They are, Elara said. In exchange for immunity. They were victims as much as criminals. That'll be for the court to decide, but given the evidence, yes, I think we can arrange immunity for cooperation. Marcus was arrested that evening. Elara wasn't there to see it, but Catherine sent word. He'd fought, screamed, threatened. It hadn't mattered. The evidence was overwhelming. The trial happened quickly by legal standards, 3 weeks. Marcus defended himself poorly, his arrogance working against him. The troop members testified one after another, describing years of exploitation and crime. The photographs of his own records sealed it. Guilty on 14 counts. 20 years imprisonment. Elara attended the sentencing. Marcus saw her in the gallery, his face contorting with rage. You think you've won? He shouted. You're still what I made you. A liar, a thief, playing Duchess. The bailiff dragged him out. His voice echoed down the corridor, then faded. Are you all right? Rowan asked. Elara realized she was crying. I don't know. I think I'm free. Actually free. For the first time since I was 14. You've been free for years. You just didn't realize it. Maybe. They returned to Blackthorn Manor to find it transformed. During their absence, Constance had done something unexpected. She'd opened the south wing. I thought it was time, she said simply when they arrived. Keeping it frozen changed nothing. Isabel is still gone, but life continues. The south wing's rooms were beautiful in the daylight, airy and bright, nothing like the tomb they'd been. Constance had removed some of Isabel's personal items, left others. I thought you might use this as your study, she told Elara, gesturing to a room with large windows overlooking the gardens. It has good light for reading. It was an offering, tentative but real. Thank you, Elara said. I'd like that. That evening, the three of them had dinner together, not in the formal dining room where Elara had been humiliated, but in the smaller family dining room that hadn't been used in years. So what now? Constance asked. You've defeated blackmail, survived influenza, and proven yourself to half of Yorkshire. What's your next challenge? Being happy, Elara said. That's the hardest one. Quite possibly the most difficult thing we've discussed, Constance agreed. But achievable, I think. After dinner, Rowan walked Elara to her rooms. But instead of leaving as he usually did, he paused in the doorway. I've been thinking, he said, about separate wings and distance and all the ways I've kept you at arm's length. Rowan, I don't want that anymore. I don't want to be afraid of feeling things. I watched you face Marcus and you were magnificent, brave and clever, and absolutely certain of who you are. He stepped closer. I want to be that certain about you, about us. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm done pretending this marriage is just practical. I'm saying I love you, and I should have said it weeks ago when I sat beside your bed, terrified you'd die. The words tumbled out, rushed and imperfect. I'm terrible at this, at saying what I mean, but I mean this. You're the best thing that's happened to me, and I want to stop wasting time being scared. Elara felt her throat tighten. I love you too, even when you're distant and frustrating and hiding in your study. I'll try to do that less. I'll believe it when I see it. He kissed her then, and it was nothing like their wedding kiss. That brief, obligatory brush of lips. This was real and messy and full of months of suppressed feeling. When they broke apart, both of them were smiling. So, Rowan said, about these separate wings? What about them? I think they're stupid. Completely agree. My rooms are larger, better view. Are you asking me to move in with you, Your Grace? I'm asking if you'd like to actually be married, in all the ways we haven't been yet. Elara pretended to consider. I suppose that would be acceptable. How gracious of you. They spent that night talking until dawn, planning a future that felt possible for the first time. They talked about children, about changing Blackthorn's traditions, about Elara's desire to use her theatrical skills for something meaningful, maybe teaching at a girls' school, or establishing a shelter for young people with nowhere to go. You could start a foundation, Rowan suggested. We have the resources. You have the experience. The Blackthorn Foundation for Lost Girls has a ring to it. So does the Duchess, who changed everything. A week later, Lady Winters hosted a tea. She'd invited every influential woman in Yorkshire, ostensibly to discuss charitable works. Really, it was a test to see how society would treat Elara after everything that had come out during Marcus's trial. Elara dressed carefully, kissed Rowan for luck, and went alone. The room fell silent when she entered. 30 women, all watching, all judging. Lady Winters stood. Ladies, the Duchess of Blackthorn. I believe you all know her by now, the woman who saved my life, and quite possibly all of ours during the influenza outbreak. Polite applause. Wary, but present. I've asked Her Grace to speak today about establishing a charitable foundation for young women in difficult circumstances. Lady Winters continued. Given her unique perspective on survival and resilience, I believe she has much to teach us. It was a gambit, forcing society to either accept Elara or openly reject Lady Winters' judgment. Most wouldn't risk the latter. Elara stepped forward. No prepared speech, just truth. I know what you've heard about me. Most of it's true. I grew up poor. I survived through theater and things I'm not proud of. I lied about my background to marry the Duke, all factual. She looked around the room. But here's what else is true. I've learned that survival takes 100 different forms. For me, it was performance and reinvention. For young women trapped in worse circumstances, it might be something else. I want to create opportunities for them. Real opportunities, not charity that demands gratitude and submission. She spoke for 20 minutes about her vision, a foundation that would provide housing, education, job training, that would treat young women like people with potential instead of problems to be managed. When she finished, silence. Then Mrs. Whitmore, the woman who'd been most vocal about proper breeding at Christmas, stood. I have a question, Your Grace. Here it came. The rejection. How much funding will this foundation require? Because I'd like to contribute. Elara blinked. What? I said I'd like to contribute. My husband was helped by his uncle at a critical moment in his life. Changed everything for him. I'd like to provide similar opportunities for these young women. Mrs. Whitmore's face was stern, but her voice was steady. You're right. Survival takes many forms, and those of us born to privilege should help those who weren't. 3 other women pledged support. Then 5 more. By the end of the tea, Elara had commitments for more than enough to start the foundation. Lady Winters walked her out afterward. You've won them over, not all of them. Some will never accept you, but enough to matter. I didn't think that was possible. Neither did I, honestly, but you kept proving yourself over and over until even the skeptics couldn't deny it. Lady Winters smiled. Welcome to Yorkshire society, Your Grace. Try not to revolutionize it too quickly. Some of us need time to adjust. Elara returned to Blackthorn Manor feeling lighter than she had in months. She found Rowan in their study, their shared study now, their rooms officially combined. How did it go? He asked. I think I just accidentally started a revolution. Of course you did. He pulled her into his arms. That's what you do. You arrive somewhere you're not wanted, refuse to leave, and change everything until it's better. Is that what I did here? Absolutely. Blackthorn was dead when you arrived. Now it's alive again. You did that. She kissed him, and for the first time since arriving at this house, Elara felt like she actually belonged. Not because she'd been accepted, though that helped, but because she'd fought for this place, this life, this person. She'd earned every inch of belonging through sheer, stubborn resilience. The girl who'd arrived in November, desperate and afraid, was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd faced blackmail, disease, public humiliation, and society's judgment, and survived it all. Spring came to Blackthorn Manor like an apology, tentative at first, then undeniable. The moors turned green, wildflowers appeared in unexpected places, and the house itself seemed to exhale after months of holding its breath. Elara stood in what had been Isabel's garden, now hers, watching workers restore the neglected flower beds. The space had been abandoned for 3 years, left to grow wild as a sort of memorial. Now it was being brought back to life. You're up early, Rowan said, joining her with 2 cups of tea. Couldn't sleep. Too much planning to do. She accepted the tea gratefully. The foundation opens in 3 weeks. We have 17 girls registered already, and Lady Winters thinks we'll have 30 by summer. Are you nervous? Terrified. What if I'm terrible at this? What if I fail them? You won't. He wrapped an arm around her waist. You're already changing lives just by creating the opportunity. That's more than most people with our resources ever do. The Blackthorn Foundation for Young Women had consumed the last 2 months of Elara's life. They'd purchased a building in York, large enough for housing, classrooms, and workshops. She'd hired teachers, secured apprenticeships with local businesses, and personally interviewed every girl who applied. Most of them reminded her of herself at 14, angry, scared, trying desperately to survive in a world designed to crush them. Catherine's arriving today, Elara said. She'll be running the theater program. Still can't believe you convinced her to teach. She's brilliant at it, and she understands these girls better than anyone with formal training ever could. Elara sipped her tea. Jenny's nervous about her new position, too. Jenny had been promoted to assistant director of the foundation. Constance had nearly had an apoplexy when Elara announced it. You're making a housemaid into an administrator? She'd demanded. I'm giving an intelligent young woman opportunities she's earned, Elara had replied, just like someone once gave me. Constance had grumbled, but ultimately supported it. She'd changed over the winter, not completely, not into someone soft and easy, but into someone willing to admit when she was wrong. It was progress. Your mother wants to host a ball, Rowan said now. I'm sorry, what? A ball. Here at Blackthorn. She says it's time to formally reintroduce you to society now that you've proven yourself. Her words. A ball. At Blackthorn Manor. Elara laughed. 6 months ago she wanted me exiled. Now she wants to throw me a party? She's complicated. That's generous. But secretly Elara was touched. A ball meant acceptance, public, undeniable acceptance. It meant Constance was ready to tell Yorkshire society that Elara belonged. When? Elara asked. June. Summer solstice. She's already planning it. Rowan smiled. You know how she gets with events. Terrifyingly efficient? Exactly. They spent the morning reviewing foundation paperwork, then Elara left for York. She'd been making the trip twice a week, overseeing renovations and meeting with potential sponsors. Today she was interviewing the last few applicants. The building looked better every time she saw it. The exterior had been repaired and painted a warm cream color. Inside, rooms that had been dark and cramped were now bright and welcoming. Dormitories on the upper floors, classrooms and workshops on the ground level, a common room where the girls could gather. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe. And for girls who'd never had safety, that mattered more than elegance. Catherine met her at the door. 3 interviews today, ages 15, 16, and 14. The youngest one is, she's going to be difficult. Difficult how? She reminds me of you. Angry, defensive, absolutely convinced the world is out to destroy her. Catherine's smile was wry. She's perfect. The first 2 interviews went smoothly. Both girls were nervous but hopeful, asking careful questions about expectations and rules. Elara liked them immediately. The third girl was different. Her name was Sarah Collier. She slouched in the chair, arms crossed, radiating hostility. She had dark hair that needed washing and clothes that had been mended so many times they were more patches than original fabric. "Why are you here, Sarah?" Elara asked. "Because the magistrate said it was this or the workhouse." "But why did you agree to the interview?" "Why do you think? I'm not stupid." "I never said you were. I asked why you're here." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You're that Duchess everyone talks about, the one who used to be an actress, the one who lied about who she was." "That's me." "So this whole thing is about you feeling guilty, trying to save girls like you used to be so you can feel better about yourself." Elara leaned back, studying this fierce, broken girl. "You're partially right. I do want to help girls like I used to be. But not because I feel guilty. Because I remember what it's like to be 14 and desperate and certain that no one in the world gives a damn if you live or die." Something flickered in Sarah's expression. "I'm not going to tell you this place will fix everything," Elara continued. "It won't. You'll still have bad days, you'll still be angry, but you'll have a bed, food, education, and people who actually want you to succeed. That's more than either of us had at your age." "What if I don't fit in?" "Then you'll be in good company. None of us fit in. That's the point." Sarah's defenses cracked slightly. "What do you teach here?" "Whatever you want to learn. Catherine runs theater classes. We have writing, mathematics, practical skills like bookkeeping and business. Some girls do apprenticeships with local shops or businesses. One of our girls wants to be a physician. We're arranging for her to study with a doctor in York." "You can't actually do that. Women can't be physicians." "Not officially, not yet. But she can learn medicine and work as a nurse with physician-level knowledge. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing." Elara leaned forward. "Sarah, I can't promise you the world will be fair, but I can promise you opportunities. What you do with them is up to you. And if I fail, then you try again. We don't throw people out for struggling. We throw them out for not trying." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "When do I start?" 2 weeks. When the foundation officially opens." After Sarah left, Catherine sat down beside Elara. "You were good with her." "I saw myself in her. The anger, the certainty that trusting anyone is a mistake." Elara rubbed her eyes. "I hope this works." "It will. Because you're not trying to save anyone. You're just giving them tools and stepping back. That's the difference." The 2 weeks passed in a blur of final preparations. Elara barely slept, running between Blackthorn and York, managing details and solving problems. The night before the opening, she collapsed into bed exhausted. "You're going to kill yourself with overwork," Rowan said, pulling her close. "Probably, but what a way to go." "I'm serious, you need to delegate more." "I know, I need this to be right." "It will be. You've done everything possible to ensure it." He kissed her forehead. "Now rest. Tomorrow is important." Opening day arrived with perfect weather, sunny but not hot, a light breeze carrying the scent of flowers from nearby gardens. Elara dressed carefully in a simple day dress, nothing too grand. She didn't want the girls to see her as untouchable. The ceremony was small. Just the girls, their families or guardians, the staff, and a few key supporters. Lady Winters spoke about the importance of education for young women. Mrs. Whitmore pledged continued funding. And then it was Elara's turn. She looked at the 17 girls assembled, 17 futures waiting to be written. "I'm not going to give you a speech about potential and opportunity," she said. "You've heard that before, and it's mostly useless. What I will tell you is this. You're here because you survived something. Maybe poverty, maybe violence, maybe just the bad luck of being born into circumstances that tried to crush you. But you survived." She paused, meeting each girl's eyes. "This place exists because I survived too, and because I learned that survival isn't enough. You have to build something after. You have to take whatever pieces of yourself are left and create something new. That's what we're doing here. Building, not fixing, because you're not broken. Building something that didn't exist before." Sarah was in the front row, her face carefully neutral but her eyes bright. "So welcome to the Blackthorn Foundation. Welcome to your future. Let's build something worth surviving for." The applause was genuine, even from the skeptical ones. Afterward, families toured the building. Parents, those who had them, looked around in wonder. Many had never seen their daughters in a place this nice with this many opportunities. One mother, rough-handed and tired-looking, grabbed Elara's arm as she passed. "Thank you," the woman whispered. "My girl, she's had such a hard time. I couldn't keep her safe. But maybe you can." "I'll try," Elara promised. "We all will." That evening, she returned to Blackthorn Manor drained but satisfied. They'd done it. Actually done it. 17 girls had a chance now. "How did it go?" Constance asked over dinner. "Better than I hoped." The girls seemed cautiously optimistic. "Good. That's a start." Constance set down her fork. "I've been thinking about the ball." "Oh, no. Oh, yes, I want it to be a statement, not just welcoming you, but celebrating what you've accomplished. The foundation, surviving the influenza outbreak, everything." "That seems excessive." "It's appropriate. You've changed this family, Elara. You've changed Blackthorn itself. People should acknowledge that publicly." Rowan caught Elara's eye, smiling. 6 months ago, this conversation would have been impossible. Now it was just dinner discussion. "Fine," Elara said. "But nothing too elaborate. I'm not comfortable with too late. Already sent the invitations." Constance's smile was wicked. 300 guests confirmed. 300? That's not a ball, that's an invasion. It's a statement, there's a difference. The next 6 weeks were chaos. Constance threw herself into party planning with military precision. Elara split her time between the foundation, which was running surprisingly smoothly, and Blackthorn, where preparations consumed everything. The house was transformed. The ballroom, unused for years, was cleaned and polished until it gleamed. Gardens were manicured to perfection. Guest rooms were prepared for visitors traveling from far distances. "Your mother is terrifying when she plans events," Elara told Rowan one evening. "Just now, figuring that out?" "I knew it intellectually. Experiencing it is different." The foundation continued to thrive. The girls were settling in, forming friendships, starting to trust. Sarah remained prickly and difficult, but she was also brilliant, devouring books, asking challenging questions, pushing back against easy answers. "She's going to be something remarkable," Catherine said, after a particularly contentious theater class. "If she doesn't kill someone first, she reminds me of me at that age." That's what worries me. 2 days before the ball, Elara received an unexpected visitor, Julian Thorne, the neighbor who'd been kind to her at that first disastrous church service. "I heard about the foundation," he said when Thomas showed him into the drawing room. "Impressive work." "Thank you. I'm still learning." "From what I hear, you're doing more than learning. You're revolutionizing how we think about charity in Yorkshire." He smiled. "My sister Margaret wants to help. She's been looking for meaningful work, and this seems perfect. Would you consider adding her to your staff?" "I'd be honored. Have her visit the foundation next week. We'll find a position that suits her skills." Julian left promising Margaret would be in touch. After he was gone, Rowan appeared with news of his own. "Lord Pemberton wants to discuss the foundation at the next parliamentary session. He thinks it should be a model for other regions." That's huge. That's what happens when you create something that actually works. He pulled her into his arms. "You're changing the world, Elara, one stubborn decision at a time. I'm just trying to help." "You're doing more than helping. You're building a legacy." The night of the ball arrived with perfect summer weather. The sun set late, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Blackthorn Manor glowed with candlelight, every window bright with welcome. Elara dressed in a gown that had taken 3 fittings to perfect, deep green silk that made her eyes look almost emerald. Jenny did her hair, weaving small flowers through the elaborate arrangement. "You look like a proper duchess," Jenny said. "I feel like I'm about to walk into battle." "Same thing, really." Guests began arriving at 8. 300 people, just as Constance had promised. All of Yorkshire society, plus visitors from London, Manchester, even Edinburgh. Everyone wanted to see the Duchess who'd survived scandal and emerged stronger. Elara and Rowan received guests at the entrance to the ballroom. Constance stood with them, a united front. "Your Grace, what a lovely evening," Lady Ashford said, her tone much warmer than it had been at Christmas. "I hear the foundation is thriving." "It is, thank you. Your donation helped make that possible." "Well, we must support meaningful work." She moved on, replaced by the next guest, then the next. They all came. Everyone who'd judged Elara, doubted her, whispered about her, and they all had to acknowledge her now, publicly, in front of witnesses. It was vindication without cruelty, acceptance without requiring her to change who she was. When the receiving line finally ended, the orchestra began playing. Rowan led Elara onto the dance floor for the opening waltz. "How are you feeling?" he asked as they moved together. "Like I'm dreaming. This can't be real." "It's real. You earned it." He spun her, and she laughed from pure joy. They danced 3 waltzes, then Elara was claimed by other partners. Lord Pemberton wanted to discuss the foundation. Sir Edmund Bartley, who'd been openly hostile at Christmas, apologized for his initial judgment. Julian Thorne's sister Margaret appeared and immediately launched into plans for expanding the foundation's programs. Halfway through the evening, Constance called for attention. The orchestra fell silent, conversations died. "Thank you all for joining us tonight," Constance said, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "We're here to celebrate summer, of course, but also to celebrate something more important, family." Elara's throat tightened. "When my son married Elara, I was skeptical." Light laughter rippled through the crowd. "I thought she was wrong for this family, wrong for Blackthorn, wrong for everything we represented. I was incorrect." The room went silent. Elara brought life back to a house that had been dying. She challenged our traditions, pushed back against our prejudices, and forced us to remember that nobility isn't about bloodlines, it's about character. Constance looked directly at Elara. "She saved lives during the influenza outbreak. She's giving opportunities to young women who would otherwise have none. She's proven herself 1,000 times over, and I'm proud to call her my daughter." The applause was thunderous. Elara found herself crying, which was mortifying but unavoidable. Rowan pulled her close, whispering, "Told you you'd win her over." "Shut up." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of dancing, conversation, and genuine celebration. For the first time since arriving at Blackthorn, Elara felt completely, undeniably at home. Around midnight, she slipped away to the music room. She needed a moment alone to process everything. She found Sarah Collier standing there looking at the piano. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" The girl jumped. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Catherine brought some of us from the foundation to see the manor, and I wandered off. I'll go—" "Stay, please." Elara sat at the piano. "Do you play?" "No, never learned." "Want to?" Sarah's eyes widened. "Really?" "Really?" Elara patted the bench beside her. "Sit, I'll teach you the basics." They spent 20 minutes on simple scales and chords. Sarah was clumsy at first, then started to get it, her face lighting up with each successful note. "This is harder than it looks," Sarah said. "Everything worthwhile is." "Do you still play? For yourself, I mean?" "Every day. It's how I remember who I was and who I've become." Elara played a simple melody. "When I first came here, this piano was covered in dust. No one had touched it in years. Playing it was an act of rebellion. What is it now? An act of joy. That's the difference time makes." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Thank you. For the foundation, for giving me a chance." "You're giving yourself a chance. I just provided the space." After Sarah left to rejoin the other girls, Elara stayed at the piano. She played quietly, the music drifting through the manor, mixing with the sounds of the ball still continuing in the ballroom. Rowan found her there an hour later. "I should have known," he said, hosting 300 guests, and you disappear to play piano. I needed a moment. It's been overwhelming. Good, overwhelming. The best kind. She shifted over, making room for him on the bench. Play with me? I don't know how. I'll teach you, just like I taught Sarah. They spent the next half hour fumbling through simple duets, laughing when they got it wrong, celebrating when they got it right. It was imperfect and clumsy and absolutely perfect. Eventually, they returned to the ball, which was still going strong. They danced until dawn, until their feet ached and their faces hurt from smiling. As the last guest departed and the sun rose over the moors, Elara and Rowan stood on the terrace overlooking the gardens. Did this actually happen? Elara asked. All of it? Every impossible moment. I keep expecting to wake up back in that London boarding house, still pretending to be someone I'm not. You're not pretending anymore. You became what you were pretending to be. That's the trick. She leaned against him. What happens now? Now we live. We run the foundation, we manage the estate, we scandalize society occasionally, and we're happy. That simple? Nothing about us is simple, but the goal is. He kissed the top of her head. We survived the hard part. Now we get to enjoy what we built. 3 months later, Elara stood in the foundation's courtyard, watching 35 girls, they'd had to expand already, practice a play Catherine had written specifically for them. It was a story about survival and reinvention, about becoming who you were meant to be. Sarah had the lead role. She was magnificent, fierce and vulnerable and completely present. She's going to be a real actress, Catherine said, joining Elara. The kind people remember. She's going to be whatever she decides to be. That's the point. The play ended to enthusiastic applause. The girls took their bows, grinning and breathless. Sarah caught Elara's eye and smiled, a real smile, unguarded and genuine. That evening, Elara returned to Blackthorn Manor to find a letter waiting. It was from the magistrate's office, formal and official. Marcus Thorne had died in prison. Heart failure. He was gone. Elara sat with the letter for a long time, trying to identify what she felt. Relief? Satisfaction? Something else? You all right? Rowan asked, finding her in their study. Marcus died. In prison. How do you feel about that? I don't know. I thought I'd feel something stronger, but mostly I just feel tired. Like I've been carrying a weight for years and it's finally gone. That's closure. It's not dramatic, but it's real. He pulled her close. You're free of him, completely. I've been free of him for years. I just didn't realize it until now. That winter, the foundation held its first graduation. 5 girls completed their programs and moved on to apprenticeships, positions, or further education. One was joining a law office as a clerk. Another had secured a nursing position. A third was opening her own dress shop with money she'd saved and a loan from Lady Winters. Elara stood before them at the ceremony, overwhelmed with pride. You came here with nothing but determination, she said. You're leaving with skills, confidence, and futures you built yourselves. That's not my accomplishment. It's yours. After the ceremony, Sarah approached. She was leaving too. Catherine had secured her a position with a theater company in London. A real one, legitimate and respected. I'm terrified, Sarah admitted. Good. That means you care. Elara hugged her. Write to me. Let me know how you're doing. I will. And ma'am, thank you for seeing me when no one else did. You made yourself worth seeing. I just paid attention. Spring returned to Blackthorn Manor, and with it came news. Elara was pregnant. Are you sure? Rowan asked for the 5th time. Dr. Harrison confirmed it yesterday, due in October. Elara watched his face carefully. How do you feel about that? Terrified, thrilled, convinced I'll be a terrible father. He pulled her close. Exactly how I should feel, I think. We'll figure it out together. Like we figured out everything else? Through chaos and determination, yes. They told Constance that evening. She cried, which neither of them had expected. I'm going to be a grandmother again, she said, wiping her eyes. I thought, after Isabel, I thought I'd never... You're going to be an excellent grandmother, Elara said. Terrifying, but excellent. I'll take that as a compliment. The pregnancy was difficult. Elara was sick constantly for the first 3 months, exhausted for the next 3, and increasingly uncomfortable for the final 3. But she kept working, kept managing the foundation, kept fighting. "You need to rest more," Rowan kept saying. "I need to stay busy or I'll go crazy. There's a middle ground somewhere. I'll find it eventually." October arrived with the first frost. Elara went into labor on a Tuesday afternoon, surrounded by women: Constance, Jenny, Lady Winters, and Dr. Harrison's new assistant, a young woman named Dr. Patricia Mills, who'd studied under him for 2 years. The labor was long and painful, but nothing went wrong. At dawn on Wednesday, Elara delivered a healthy daughter. "She's perfect," Rowan whispered, holding the baby with terrified reverence. "She's wrinkly and angry," Elara said, exhausted but smiling. "But yes, perfect." They named her Isabel Catherine Hale, honoring both the past and the present. Constance cried again when they told her, "You didn't have to." "Yes, we did. Isabel was part of this family. She deserves to be remembered." Elara took the baby back. But this Isabel will write her own story. The christening was held at St. Michael's Church on a clear December day. Half of Yorkshire attended. The vicar who'd given such pointed sermons about wifely duty was notably more respectful now. At the reception afterward, held at Blackthorn Manor, Elara stood in the ballroom holding her daughter, surrounded by people who'd become friends, allies, family. "You did it," Lady Winter said. "You actually transformed everything." "I survived, that's all." "No, you thrived. There's a difference." Elara looked around the room, at Rowan talking with Lord Pemberton about expanding the foundation's funding, at Constance showing off her granddaughter to anyone who'd listen, at Jenny managing staff with quiet competence, at the young women from the foundation who'd been invited as honored guests. She thought about the terrified girl who'd arrived at Blackthorn Manor 15 months ago, certain she'd never belong, certain she'd always be pretending. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd fought for every inch of her life, messy, imperfect, but undeniably real. "Your Grace?" Sarah had traveled from London for the christening. "Could I hold her, the baby?" "Of course." Elara transferred the infant carefully. "You're good with her." "I had younger siblings, before everything fell apart." Sarah looked down at little Isabel. "What are you going to tell her when she's old enough to ask about you?" "The truth, that I came from nothing, lied about everything, and somehow ended up here. That survival takes 100 different forms, and there's no shame in any of them." Elara smiled. "And that she gets to choose who she becomes, just like I did." "That's a good story." "It's not finished yet. None of our stories are." Later that night, after all the guests had left and the house was quiet, Elara stood at the window of the nursery, watching snow begin to fall. Rowan joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Tired?" he asked. "Exhausted. Happy. Still can't quite believe this is my life." "Believe it. You built it. We built it." "Fair." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching snow cover the moors in white. Somewhere in York, the foundation housed 40 girls now, all building their own futures. Somewhere in Yorkshire society, minds were changing about what nobility meant. Somewhere in this house, a baby slept peacefully, unaware of the battles fought to give her a different kind of legacy. "I love you," Elara said quietly. "I love you too. Even when you're revolutionizing Yorkshire and making my mother cry and generally causing chaos. Especially then." "Especially then," he agreed. The next morning, Elara walked through Blackthorn Manor and felt something she'd never expected to feel in this house: peace. The portraits of dead Hales no longer seemed to judge her. The cold marble floors no longer felt hostile. The sprawling corridors no longer felt designed to isolate. She'd changed this house, and it had changed her. In the music room, she sat at the piano and played, not in rebellion, not in defiance, but simply because she wanted to. The music filled the manor, bright and alive, and this time everyone welcomed it. Jenny brought tea and stayed to listen. Constance paused in the hallway, smiling before moving on. Rowan appeared in the doorway and just watched, content. And in the nursery upstairs, baby Isabel slept peacefully, dreaming whatever dreams infants dream, unaware that her mother had rewritten every rule to give her a different kind of future. Elara played until her fingers ached, until the afternoon light turned golden, until the story she'd been living finally felt complete. Not perfect, not without scars, but hers. Entirely, undeniably, triumphantly hers. And that was enough. Years later, when Sarah Collier became one of London's most celebrated actresses, she would tell interviewers about the Duchess of Blackthorn, the woman who'd seen potential in angry, broken girls and given them the tools to build their own futures. When the Blackthorn Foundation expanded to 6 cities across England, providing opportunities for thousands of young women, journalists would write about the Duchess who'd revolutionized charity through understanding rather than pity. When Isabel Catherine Hale grew up to become a physician, the first woman in Yorkshire to officially hold that title, she would credit her mother's stubborn refusal to accept the world's limitations. But Elara never saw herself as revolutionary. She was just a woman who'd survived, who'd fought, who'd refused to let anyone, including herself, believe she didn't belong. She'd walked into Blackthorn Manor with nothing but determination and a false name. She'd walked out with everything that mattered: family, purpose, and the knowledge that sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is simply refusing to disappear. The House of Ice had thawed, and in its place stood something better, something built on truth, resilience, and the revolutionary idea that who you become matters more than where you came from. Elara Voss, the girl from Portsmouth, had earned her place, Duchess of Blackthorn, builder of futures, survivor of every battle that mattered, not because she was perfect, but because she never stopped fighting to deserve the life she'd claimed.